Good evening, and welcome to the Madera City Council.
Recording in progress.
This is a regular meeting of the Madera City Council and special meeting of the Madera City Council as the groundwater system sustainability agency. And we also are calling for the special meeting of the Madera City Council tonight. The Madera City Council meetings are open to the public. This meeting will also be available for public viewing and participation through Zoom. Members of the public may also observe the live stream meeting on the city's website at www.madera.gov/live. Members of the public may comment on agenda items at the meeting or remotely through an electronic meeting via phone by dialing 669-900-6833. Enter ID 837-5313, 6682 hashtag. Comments will also be accepted via email at City Council Public Meeting, public comment at madera.gov, or by regular mail at 205 West 4th Street, Madera, California, 93637. I hereby call this regular and special meeting of the Madera City Council and the Madera City Council as Groundwater Sustainability Agency to order at 6 p.m. Alicia, would you call the roll, please?
Mayor Garcia.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Gallegos is absent. Councilmember Rodriguez.
Here.
Councilmember Montes.
Here.
Councilmember Evans.
Here.
Councilmember Mejia.
Here.
And Councilmember Villegas.
Here.
Thank you, Alicia. Would you all please rise for the invocation led tonight by Pastor Brandon Hopkins of Grace Community Church. Anita, would you do the honors?
I will. Thank you very much. Blessings, each and every one of you. Thank you for being in the house. This is the people's house, and we wish to welcome each and every one of you. Please bow your heads. Gracious Heavenly Father, thank you for this day, Lord. Thank you for bringing us here. Thank you for allowing each and every one of us to awaken this morning. Father, we call on you right now, asking that you protect each and every one of us, covering us, Father, with the blood of your Son, Jesus Christ, and giving us a hedge of protection around us, Father, protecting the city, protecting this council, protecting all those that are here, and asking for traveling grace for each one to go home. And we ask that you calm down the heat a little bit, Lord. In your Son's precious name, Christ Jesus, amen.
Amen. Please maintain your standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Let Councilwoman Evans.
Salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilwoman. You're doing double duty tonight.
It's all right.
We now move on to the approval of the agenda.
So move for the approval.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? The ayes have it. Helen, were you going to start your presentation? We will start this special meeting regarding the sewer lines, and then we'll have the regular meeting afterwards.
Evening, Mayor, members of the council. We're here tonight on quite short notice for a special meeting to declare a state of emergency regarding the collapse of the Avenue 13 sewer trunk main. And at this time, I'm going to share my presentation. Okay, so sharing with. Okay. We can share. Okay, missed that one step. So Monday afternoon, the city staff received word from county staff of a sinkhole in Avenue 13. It was about between 2 and 2:30, maybe, when they received word for that. The location is on Avenue 13, kind of right in front of the Mission Bell truck entrance driveway. And here's a overall picture. It is west of the failure that we had about a year and a half ago. And it is downstream from the convergence of the 42-inch pipeline that we had repaired. And then there's a 36-inch pipeline that comes from the north. If it was further on the map, it's the Westbury trunk main alignment that comes in from the north. And so it's likely the convergence of those two lines that causes this condition that creates the excess gas that deteriorates the pipe and beyond its useful life. So in order to maintain our sewer flow for the citizens, we had to engage several contractors to maintain the bypass pumping for the plant. We brought in Rain for Rent to do bypass pumping, and Floyd Johnston Construction, who was on our previous project, and also Rain for Rent was as well, is assisting with those efforts. We've brought in Safety Network for traffic control because we've had to do a complete road closure of Avenue 13 and a detour. And other trades might be required for investigations and testing. I do want to note that fortunately, both Georgia Pacific and Mission Bell Winery have additional access points off of Road 24 and I think it's Avenue 12 or 12 and a half for their facilities. So they've been able to maintain their service deliveries. In accordance with the Public Contract Code 22050, Section A1, in the case of an emergency, a public agency, pursuant to a 4/5 vote of its governing body, may repair or replace a public facility, take any directly related and immediate action required by that emergency, and procure the necessary equipment, services, and supplies for those purposes without giving notice for bids to let contracts. And that's the condition under which we need to move forward on this project right now. Here is the bypass pumping setup. This was last night at 11:40 p.m. They worked through the night. They installed plugs in the segment of pipe that had failed so that they could bypass pump. And I think that was completed by about 3 a.m. this morning. And they were able to turn on the pump system and continue operation as usual as far as pumping the sewage flows. So the restrictions or the requested restrictions on water usage have been lifted since this morning. Here's just a picture of the setup. We actually have 6 pumps out there and 2 standby pumps in case there are problems with any of those, because they has to be set up to cover any peak flows that could come to the end of the trunk main. This is again, the bypass system that discharges to the manhole that was downstream. So the focus for the last couple of days has been setting up that bypass system. We haven't been able to get into the failed area, but we will be tomorrow. A brief history, and you're probably familiar with it. This is the only trunk main that conveys all of the city and also the flow from Parksdale to our wastewater treatment plant. Carries about 5 million gallons per day. And unfortunately, it's the structural integrity due to the gases of this concentrated effluent wastewater flow that's kind of at the end of the line that is creating this corrosion in the pipelines. And this was recognized when we did our citywide condition assessment, when we were able to get a video in there, and we began planning for the rehab of this pipeline back in 2021 with MKN and Associates. They've designed actually 3 phases of the project, and due to some funding that's been secured, we're able to move forward with phases 1 and 2. Just also a reminder of the January 2023, it was a very similar condition of pipe. We had that collapse that occurred where basically the top of the pipe kind of falls in. We're fortunate in this one that it maintained a channel so the sewer could continue flowing, so we didn't have the great backups that we could have had. And we've been able to get the bypass in place in case there's any further collapse in there. The cost associated with the January repairs were about 2.7 million. We made a claim to FEMA because it was due to the weather event that happened that year. And it's promising, and we understand they're moving forward with it, but we haven't received payment on that claim yet. That was catastrophic in the event, and the costs were so high, obviously, because we had the issue with the railroad and the other pipelines that were involved with that. Here, it's more localized, and we don't see a claim or a cost to this extent for this repair. So we were moving forward with the rehab for phase 1 and 2. We had advertised for bids. We had opened bids last week. We are planning to still bring a recommendation for award of that contract at your next meeting on June 19th. Construction is to begin in July, and fortunately, this emergency won't impact the schedule for that main project. We're going to start with best case scenario, and at our next report will be the truer figures depending upon what we find. We're estimating the cost for these repairs right now is $250,000 to $300,000, calling that best case scenario for repair of the pipeline and the roadway. $60,000 to $65,000 for the bypass pumping. Traffic control is about $40,000, and approximate $10,000 for additional costs. That's presuming that these repairs can happen quickly and maybe be finished up by next week. The next steps, we have to wait for the underground service alert, or USA, to clear, which happened today at 5. So Floyd Johnston couldn't really get into the project site until after that. And they'll begin investigating tomorrow, digging into the hole and seeing the damage to the pipeline. Tomorrow, we hope to get a video camera in there so we can assess the condition of the pipe to make sure that we can do a simple repair, which is just to replace the failed pipe, button it up, and then we can come back with our lining project as planned. I do want to note that we will probably be using 48-inch pipe supplied by ADS just down the street to make that repair. So it's nice to have those neighbors nearby. The project that's in our CIP for the Avenue 13 trunk rehab project can absorb these emergency costs. Though we aren't able to report the recommended bid amount, it was less than the engineer's estimate, so there's some cost savings, and so we'll be able to use that towards this repair of the project. And overall, between the American Rescue Plan funds and some of the earmarks that we've received from our officials, we are able to provide a focused effort for the rehab of this trunk main, not only from Granada to the plant, but begin design and plans for rehab of the pipeline also east of Granada to Highway 99. So tonight, our recommendation is to adopt the resolution, making a finding of emergency related to the sewer failure on the sewer main at Avenue 13 between Granada and Road 24, affirming the emergency actions taken by the city manager to make emergency repairs on the sanitary sewer main, and ratifying the award of emergency contracts without competitive bidding for the emergency repairs on the sewer main. That concludes my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Ellen. Are there any members of the public wishing to comment on this item? Alicia, do we have any Zoom or written comments?
We have none, Mayor.
Okay, we will close public comment and bring it back to my colleagues for questions. Mr. Rodriguez.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Ellen, thank you for that presentation. So we haven't really assessed the extent of the damage of that pipe yet.
That's correct. We've been able to visually see what we think is hopefully a collapse of a single segment of the concrete pipe. We can see a full joint visible, which means that hasn't collapsed. And but until we can get the excavator in to remove the material that is on top of the pipe, we won't know for sure.
I know there was a couple of years back where we had a presentation regarding what these gases do to the pipe, but it was at the wastewater treatment plant. But it was reinforced by rebar. I'm assuming these don't have that, right? So the collapse is, it's inevitable when.
Oh, it's reinforced concrete pipe, so was rebar in there. What happens is the gases actually eat away at the rebar and cause it to corrode, and it starts dropping into the pipe. And so there are areas where you can see remains of rebar, like rust marks, but the rebar's gone.
So based on that, would you say, obviously there's several feet. The project consists of 24,000 feet of this pipe. You said ADS is providing a 40-inch. Is this just a temporary pipe until we get this other project? And obviously that has to also take into account for the cost too, correct?
Yeah, so ADS is providing, and it's there, we're purchasing the pipe to install. They're replacing the failed piece. So we don't know if that's 20 feet or 40 feet yet. We'll be removing the failed pipe, replacing it with the new pipe, a short segment. And then the plan is to provide a liner for the pipe from Granada out to the plant.
So pipe up until a certain area, then liner from there on out. Is that what I'm hearing?
Right.
Okay.
The main project would actually, and we'll line right through this pipe that we're putting in. So it's holding it in place, and then we'll line right through it.
Got it. Thank you, Ellen. Appreciate it.
Councilwoman Evans.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you to each and every one of you that jumped right on top of it. I know that this was something that was unexpected. I have had a sinkhole in front of my home before, so I do understand what's going on. But to have so many different entities come out and to be able to just jump on top of it, I thank you, each and every one of you, the city, the fire, the police, city manager, engineering, everyone. You guys are totally awesome. So keep us safe and keep the water flowing. So that's what I have to say. Hand it back to me.
Councilwoman Mejia.
Thank you very much for the presentation and for all of the work that city is doing out there. Does this pose a continued danger for road users?
The road is closed between Granada and Road 24, so we're keeping traffic off of it. It's a localized concern, and definitely traffic staying away from it. But access to the homes, we're allowing vehicles in there, and also on the north side of the roadway, the equipment is driving up and down on that. So at the moment, we don't see it as an issue. You know, if our general public sees something that looks odd, call it in. You know, it doesn't hurt to run out and investigate it.
Thank you.
Mr. I do have one last question.
Yes, sir.
Ellen, what's the lifespan of these trunk lines? And how old has that, how long have we had that trunk line?
We're about there. It is about 50 years old. The pipeline went in when the treatment plant was built, so in the early 70s. And unfortunately, with the presence of the gases, it accelerates the deterioration in this condition versus maybe a concrete line that's less use in town. Those can last longer.
Now, and because of the nature of the gases and what they do to maybe concrete in this case, with this other pipe that we're laying out, do we have an idea of what the lifespan is and what happens when it contacts these gases? Can it still, can the gas deteriorate at some time in the future?
The material of the liner that's going in has a longer lifespan and should withstand these gases better than the concrete did. So we expect that it will last 50 plus at least for this repair project. Not this repair, but the whole lining project.
So I don't know that I'll be here by that time, but hopefully it does meet that lifespan, if not more. But yeah, 'cause obviously we look at the cost. We saw what the cost was on the last one. And, you know, having to patch up these emergency repairs obviously becomes a big cost. So hopefully we get underway with this project and we get this completed, because I know it's very important. It's the only trunk line that's supplying the sewage over to the wastewater treatment plant. So it's very important. So thank you again.
Seeing no further comments, I'll ask for a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second. Motion to approve by Councilwoman Evans, second by Councilmember Villegas. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you very much, Ellen. This concludes the special meeting, and we will now go on back to our regular scheduled meeting. Mr. Hall? You have anybody with you? Well, come on up. Come on up. You're welcome. This is from the City of Madera, Office of the Mayor. This is proclamation in favor of Juneteenth Day. And to explain to y'all what this proclamation and day means is Mr. Holly, who is never at a lack for words. There you go.
I am lack for words. Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you. You know, it's an honor to receive any kind of certificate from anyone, especially from the city, to share something with you. I'm the only person in this city that had the key to the city. That's the truth. And no, I don't. No. Trinice Givens, one of our members, and our president, Stephanie Nathan, and our chair, Sister Evans, and the mayor and council, and so on and so on. But thank you again. Like I said, I do have the key to the city. I should have brought it, but again, you know, honor is it's not something I do; it's something God does for me. So having that kind of background makes you feel real good. Elections coming up. I ain't gonna say no more.
A little bit about Juneteenth. Yes.
So hi, I'm Stephanie Nathan. I'm the president of the Madera NAACP. And Mr. Hawley's a member. And Juneteenth is really a celebration of the emancipation of the slaves. It is not the date the slaves were freed, but it is a date that the slaves were freed in Galveston, Texas, which was, it took a while for word to reach the United States all across the U.S. They didn't have email, obviously. And so it took a while for slaves to know that they were free, even though the Emancipation Proclamation had been signed. So June 19th, 1865 is the date that word reached Galveston, Texas, and the last slaves were freed. And that's what we're celebrating.
Right.
Ready? 1, 2, and just 8.
Thanks everyone for attending.
The chair's there because we got one more.
You gotta sit down.
You guys ready? Gonna take a couple minutes. Guys, can I come?
Come on. We didn't match for no reason.
It is my honor to present you with this proclamation from the City of Madera for Pride Month. Whereas the month of June 2023 is recognized as lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer LGBTQ Pride Month throughout the central San Joaquin Valley. It should be 2024. But anyway, so we are a welcoming city. This city here accepts everyone in their midst without any prejudice at all. And we love everyone because love is love, period. Here you go.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Lynette Lomeli. I'm the Executive Director at the Madera Coalition for Community Justice. I want to keep my portion really brief. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Council, for allowing us to receive this proclamation. I do want to introduce somebody who has been extremely pivotal in the work that we have been doing, specifically for the LGBTQIA community, and her name is Jasmine Guzman. She's a project coordinator at the Madera Coalition for Community Justice. But beyond that, she's certainly somebody who is coming into her own and a trailblazer, specifically in this work that's extremely important for representation and inclusivity here in the city of Madera. So I'd like to introduce Jasmine.
Okay, good evening. Thank you, Mayor Garcia and City Council members. It's an immense honor to stand before you today and receive this Pride Proclamation from our beloved city of Madera. This moment marks a significant milestone, not just for me, but for everyone who has worked tirelessly to champion the rights and recognition of the LGBTQ+ community in Madera. This proclamation is more than a piece of paper. It's a symbol of acceptance, a beacon of hope, and a testament to the progress we have made together. It represents the countless voices that have spoken out for equality, the brave individuals who have lived their truths despite adversity, and the allies who have stood by our side unwaveringly. Today, we celebrate love in all its forms. We celebrate diversity, inclusion, and the undeniable truth that everyone deserves to live authentically and freely. This recognition from our city sends a powerful message that every person, regardless of who they love or how they identify, is valued and respected here in Madera. However, let us also remember the work that remains. Our journey is far from over. We must continue to advocate for those who still face discrimination and strive to create a world where everyone can live without fear. Let this proclamation inspire us to push forward, to educate, to support, and to uplift one another. I extend my heartfelt gratitude to the city officials, community leaders, and every individual who has made this proclamation possible. Your dedication and support have paved the way for a brighter, more inclusive future here in Madera. Together, we will continue to build a community that not only accepts but celebrates our differences. So on behalf of myself and the Madera Coalition for Community Justice team, we proudly accept this proclamation and we thank you. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Get closer if you like. You can go up there.
So we can all.
Turn sideways.
Pretty informal.
There you go.
Maybe 2 rooms.
You guys have to start.
Oh, good.
And then, there you go. Okay, there you go. Ready. 1, 2, and 3. Got it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, I'd like to say a few words.
Absolutely.
It was an honor and quite a privilege to be able to recommend your group for this proclamation, to learn of the space that you're creating for our youth and our community of Madera. It was very it was great news for me. I was one of the first members of the Gay Straight Alliance when I was in Madera High School, and I have been seeing since my youth how demonized the LGBTQ community is here in Madera, unfortunately. And while I know that these are baby steps and we are headed in the right direction, so thank you very much for creating that space for all of our community and for being here. Thank you.
We now move on to the consent calendar. Matters listed under the consent calendar.
We need public comment.
On the other one? On the. Should we have public comment again? Okay, all right. We now move on to public comment. The first 15 minutes of the meeting are reserved for members of the public to address the council on items which are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the council. Speakers shall be limited, bless you. Speakers shall be limited to 3 minutes. Speakers will be asked, but are not required, to identify themselves and state the subject of their comments. If the subject is an item on the agenda, the mayor has the option of asking the speaker to hold a comment until that item is called. Comments on items listed as a public hearing on the agenda should be held until the hearing is opened. The council is prohibited by law from taking any action on matters discussed that are not on the agenda, and no adverse conclusion should be drawn if the council does not respond to public comment at this time. Are there any members of the public wishing to speak under public comment?
Hi, it's me again. My name is Lynette Lomeli, the Executive Director at the, am I supposed to start the timer? Madera Coalition for Community Justice. I left something out that is super important. We are working to plan the first ever Pride event here in Madera. We have the date set for June 22nd from 5 to 8 p.m. and it's going to be at the community garden that I know Councilmember Mejia has holds a special place in her heart. The address is 611 4th Street. And again, that is Saturday, June 22nd from 5 to 8 p.m. Thank you.
Is there any other public comment?
How's it going, everyone? Let me stop. It already started on its own. So my name is Kyle Savage. I'm the field representative for Madera and Fresno County for Congressman John Duarte. I just first wanted to recognize that the city of Madera and their outstanding response to the trunk line sewer, with the failure of it, it's a tremendous, unfortunate event, but you guys handled it so quickly. And so our office wanted to recognize you guys with how amazing of a job you did. Just a fast response. It was awesome. Going forward, our office also wants to state that we're going to be having our Service Academy Information Night on June 17th at Castle Air Museum in Atwater at 6 p.m. We'll give an opportunity for high schoolers that are either thinking about going into a military academy such as West Point, or even just going into the military itself. We'll have representatives from the Navy, Air Force, as well as the Coast Guard, Marines, the Marines Merchants, as well as ROTC programs from Fresno State. Going forward as well, we know that 3 weeks ago was National Police Week, and May 15th was National Peace Officer Memorial's Day. And during that time, Congressman Duarte is proud to have voted for the bipartisan Improving Law Enforcement Officer Safety and Wellness Through Data Act. There has been a sharp rise in anti-police rhetoric and a corresponding rise in violent acts against law enforcement officers. In 2023 alone, 378 officers were shot in the line of duty. Throughout this year, there were also 115 ambush-style attacks on law enforcement. It is vital that we have accurate data regarding violent attacks, including ambushes on police officers. Additionally, police often suffer assaults and other violent offenses that go unrecorded. Anti-police rhetoric and violence negatively impacts officers' mental health and wellness. This bipartisan Improving Law Enforcement Officer Safety and Data Wellness Through Data Act would require the Attorney General to develop reports relating to violent attacks against law enforcement officers and present these reports to the Judiciary Committee in the House and the Senate. These reports would also include critical data on the number of offenders who target law enforcement due to anti-police sentiment, incorporate an analysis of how federal, state, and local police agencies respond to these attacks, and how well they prepare their officers to prevent attacks and respond to them. Other essential data points would include an assessment of the effectiveness and the limitations of the federal bulletproof vest partnership, an examination of gaps in current data reporting as part of a study of legislative tools that may help in deterring ambush attacks. The act will also better identify how frequent and severe attacks impact officers' mental health and study the types of mental health resources and services currently available and identify new potential services for our officers. As always, Congressman Duarte stands by our first responders, including law enforcement, and always will. Thank you guys very much for your time.
Thank you.
Am I supposed to start the time? Oh. Good evening, City Council. My name is Joanna Torres. My pronouns are she, her. Thank you for the proclamations recognizing Juneteenth and Pride Month this evening, two historically marginalized communities. It gives me hope for our city. As the Madera Coalition for Community Justice shared, they're organizing Madera's first ever Pride event in Madera. A space that I wish was in place a long time ago, as our councilwoman also shared some of the things that we've been seeing in the community. Nonetheless, as you are all aware, the coalition is a nonprofit that has limited resources, but yet they continue to provide eloquent services to our most disadvantaged communities in Madera. I humbly ask you to please consider financially supporting this historic effort to hold a safe space for our LGBTQ plus community in Madera. Everyone in the community, please consider supporting this very important safe space for our community that is very much needed. As people of color, it is our responsibility to make sure that our ancestors' injustices are not repeated for other minorities who continue to be marginalized by the majority. Thank you so much for your time.
Hello, I'm back again. I just wanted to let everybody know that in addition to the city's event for Juneteenth, the NAACP is also sponsoring a art exhibit that I am working on with the Madera County Arts Council. Wave Arish to everybody. Our opening reception is going to be June 13th from 5 to 7 p.m. There will be light refreshments along with a discussion panel. So I hope to see you all there.
Are there any further public comments? Seeing none, we will close public comment and move on to our consent calendar. Matters listed under the consent calendar are considered routine and will be enacted by one motion and one vote. There will be no separate discussion of these items. If discussion is desired, a member of the public or a member of the council may request an item be removed from the consent calendar and it will be considered separately.
Mayor, if I may, for the record, Councilwoman Gallegos has arrived. 6:38.
Do you need a motion on that open public comment?
I'm waiting for any members of the public wishing to speak on the consent calendar. Ask any questions. Do we have any written or Zoom?
We have none, Mayor.
All right. Then we will close public comment on that and then bring it back to discussion and our motion from my colleagues.
Motion to approve the agenda, please.
The consent calendar, I'll second.
I'm sorry.
That's all right. The heat is getting to us all, I tell you that much, no lie. All those motion to approve the consent calendar by Councilwoman Evans, second by Councilmember Rodriguez. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you very much. We will now move on to our workshop. Item C1 is a budget workshop. Mr. Lima, I believe you have this item.
Yes, I do. Let's see. Let's see if I can actually do this. Nope. I'm still technologically challenged.
It's okay.
Almost there.
Almost.
Blame it on the heat.
One of these days I will get
I was
it.
cheering you on.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Council. Mike Lima, Director of Financial Services. Tonight is the first sneak peek of our FY 24-25 budget. You know, you've heard a lot about what other cities are doing and what the situation is with other cities. Well, I'm here tonight to talk about what's happening here. And anyhow, let's get right into the show. Okay. So staff is in the midst of preparing the fiscal year 24-25 budget for council consideration. This presentation will just focus on the revenue side, and we'll discuss three main items. First is an update on 23-24 revenues, a partial list of projected revenues for the upcoming year, and some general comments about the assumptions that are shaping 24-25. Council might remember I did a mid-year report about 2 months ago, so I'm going to update those numbers for you tonight. All right, let's get started with the general fund. And, you know, I've probably said this enough that someone has gone out and trademarked it, but we have the big five revenues here at the city. Those five revenues are sales tax, property tax in lieu of VLF, property tax by itself, permit revenues, and interest. The big five make up 66% of total general fund revenue. If these don't come in, the general fund doesn't do well. Let's start with sales tax, which is the single biggest source of revenue for the general fund. What you have here in front of you, or what you're seeing on your screen, is sales tax revenues by month so far this fiscal year compared to last fiscal year. And the blue line is last year, and the orange line is this year. And you'll notice that there's you know, the lines are tracking pretty close until you get to December. And I mentioned this in the mid-year that December did not go well. We were short compared to the previous year. January ended up, so the new numbers are January, February, and March. January also ended up a little short. February, pretty close. And then March was a little short as well. Overall, through March, we're down 3% on our sales tax. But I think the key takeaway from this is that orange line is not above the blue line. And that's what you really want to see. And it's not happening this year. So when that happens, we have flat revenues. And that's really what we're enjoying on the sales tax side. Slightly down, like I said, about 3%, but overall, generally 3% is not that big a number. It's still down though. And we like to see that go up. In fact, this is the first time in 5 fiscal years that we've had negative sales tax numbers. So that tells you something that's going on. This kind of gives you a snapshot of where we're at. FY 22-23, we collected $12.4 million. Our budget this fiscal year was 13.1. We have collected so far through the end of May, 9.4. We're projecting we're going to end up 12.1 million. That's $1 million under our amended budget. Working with HDL, our city sales tax consultant, we've come up with an estimate of $12.9 million for FY 24-25, down from this year. But as you see, they're projecting about an $800,000 increase compared to what we're thinking this fiscal year is going to end up. So why is that? Why are we seeing that kind of growth, especially because other cities aren't seeing that kind of sales tax growth? Well, it's some of the new businesses that have come into town, in and out. Ross is opening up. There's other areas that are opening up, and those are going to be generating, our sales tax consultant believes, and we agree, that's going to be generating some additional revenue that we had not had in previous budgets. And so it's going to mitigate that decrease going into next year. But we're still not seeing strong growth. And that's the key thing to keep in mind. Property tax in lieu of VLF. This has turned out to be a very major revenue source for our city. We collected $7.4 million in 22-23. Our budget was 7.6. we've already collected 8.2. So we're up $600,000. We think we're going to get about another 100,000 before the fiscal year ends. And so we have projected that it's going to grow about 2% next year. That'll put us at 8.5 million. That's quite an increase. So as you see, the property tax in lieu of VLF almost offsets what's going on with sales tax. In case you don't know, property tax in lieu of VLF is additional property tax provided to offset the loss of vehicle license fees that were taken by the state beginning in 2004. It grows as assessed values grow. Let's take a look at property tax by itself. So these are property tax collections over the last 5 fiscal years. And if you notice, 1920, we're just over 4 million. We had a drop in 2021, COVID year. Things dropped that year. Since then, we've been moving up very nicely on our property tax. FY 21-22, just over 4.2 million, 22-23, about 4.5. And this year we're projecting we're going to hit $4.8 million. So again, we're picking up a lot of revenue. I just want to say that when you average these 5 years out, it's a 5.75% growth rate is what we're seeing in property tax, which is pretty strong. If you take out the COVID year, it actually is closer to 7% over the last 3 years. So very strong property tax growth. That's a combination of new development. It's a combination of sales of homes that are selling at higher prices. And it's a combination of those two things, basically. So given that, again, as I mentioned, FY 22-23 collected about 4.5 million. Our budget this year had a 4.6 million estimate. We have collected so far 4.4. We think we are going to hit 4.8 before the end of the fiscal year. And next year we have bumped it up by 2%, and we are looking at 4.9. So you're probably sitting there going, well, why didn't you bump it up 5 or 6 or 7 like you're seeing? You can't count on that. Especially with interest rates where they are, they probably will start slowing down on new development, new home sale or home sales. And so we're just being conservative here. And to that point, I want to show you the next set of revenues, which are permits, which also have a direct impact on development, has a direct impact on those revenues. These are permit fees. So in 22-23, well, by permit fees, I should mention, we are talking about building permits, fire permits, electrical, not development impact fees. But on the permit fees, we collected $1.5 million in 22-23. Our budget, we assumed $1 million. Again, thinking that there was going to be some sort of slowdown. We've collected $1.1 million so far. We think we're going to end the year at $1.2 million, but we're going to stick with that $1 million projection. We are just seeing a slowdown, and you can even see it between 22-23 and what we think this fiscal year is going to do. 300,000 down. So that's about a 20% decrease. That's pretty significant. Again, we're not seeing new development come in, and that has an impact on these revenues. The last of the big 5 is interest. In 22-23, we collected $600,000. We built our budget at $1 million. I'm happy to say we have actually collected $1 million through May 31st. We're going to stick with that $1 million because I like being conservative, and we're going to stick with $1 million for next year. Now, that being said, the city's going to has $17.2 million of investments that are coming due between today and September 30th. Those investments are currently earning about 0.75%. Again, that's 0.75%, not 7.5, 0.75. We're going to be replacing those with investments earning between 4 and 5%. So, to put that in dollar terms, 17.2 million at 0.75% is earning about 130,000 a year. At 4.5%, the 17.2 million is earning almost $730,000. So we're looking at picking up an extra 600,000 just from this portion right here. So I think when the city manager and I have the final arm wrestling contest as to what the bunch of numbers look like, I think he's going to tell me bump this number up, and I may be inclined to support him on that. So, a couple other key revenues, because I know these came up during the mid-year. Cable franchise fees continue to decline. People are cutting cords. They're not using cable as much, and we see it in the numbers. Our projection this year, we're projecting we're going to finish the year $284,000. The budget was built assuming $326,000, so we're going to fall short. So consequently, we've we're basing next year's figure. We're saying we're going to collect 275. So a further decrease. We see this figure decreasing as time goes on, as more and more people go to streaming as opposed to a cable model that they use for their television. And hotel tax continues to show weakness. We're right now projecting we're going to finish the year at 900,000. And that's what we've set next year's budget figure at. As a kind of a comparison, in fiscal year 22-23, we collected 1.1 million. So we've lost $200,000 in the last year on hotel tax. That means people are not staying in our hotels for whatever reason. They're not. So let's take a look at at the big picture. This is the general fund. The big five, we're projecting that they're going to collect 27.3 million in FY 24-25. All other general fund revenues right now, as of today, we think they're coming in at 13.6. We have a few more that we need to calculate. So that number is probably going to go up slightly. But as of today, it's at 13.6. So we're estimating right now, today, we're estimating a $40.9 million budget estimate for next year. I think it's going to actually end up closer to the FY 23-24 amended of 41.5 when we're all said and done. But the key point here, it's not growing. Every revenue that's gone up has a counterpart that's going down, and they're offsetting each other. And we're not seeing any of the revenue growth in the general fund. Some assumptions for the upcoming fiscal year: we do not plan to budget any cannabis tax money. A lot of cities have gotten kind of ahead of their skis on that and assumed that there was going to be money coming in, and the actual revenue turned out to be much lower than what the budget assumptions were. And then they had to scramble to fill the gap. So we are taking a conservative approach. We are not going to include any cannabis tax monies in the 24-25 budget. Instead, we're going to wait to see what actual receipts are, and then we're going to build based off of those for the 25-26 budget. It is highly likely that the city will be receiving a rebate on its solar project of $2 million in fiscal year 24-25 and another $1 million in 25-26. On May 15th, the finance department submitted, with the help of some consultants, submitted a claim with the Federal Department of Treasury for the solar rebate. They have acknowledged receipt of that, and then they said that a final determination of the amount will come within 3 to 6 months of submission of that. So, sometime in the fall, we should have a pretty good idea of how much exactly, but the estimate right now is $2 million in fiscal year 24-25, $1 million in 25-26. Again, we are not including that in the budget. First off, it's not all general fund. To start off with, it belongs to all different funds. So we have to do an analysis of how much each fund is going to get. General fund will get some, it won't get all of it. But the other thing is we don't know what the actual final figure is. And so we're hesitant to put it in until we know how much money is actually going to be received from the feds. But we do anticipate it will be 7 figures for both fiscal years. And finally, the general fund carryover or fund balance will be budgeted to cover previously approved previously approved salary increases per council direction from a couple of years ago. Let's look at Measure K. If you probably are there going, well, Measure K is a sales tax. If sales tax is flat or down, sales tax is flat or down, Measure K's could be flat or down, and you would be dead on right. That's exactly what's happening. Fiscal year 22-23 actuals are 7 million, or were 7 million. Our budget assumes 7.2. Actual through May 31st is 4.6. We think we're going to end the year at 6.8. Again, working with HDL, we've come up with an estimate of 7 million. So what we collected in 22-23 is what we're anticipating to collect in 24-25. These are combined figures, so police gets half, fire gets the other half. Utility revenues are holding up very well. again, we are seeing growth thanks to the rate increases that council approved. So they are actually coming in very stable. We're anticipating about $13 million for each water, sewer, and solid waste in the upcoming year. We are going to take a little more look at the solid waste number. We want to make sure that that one that everything is being accounted in there, but we feel pretty good about these numbers, that they are holding up very well. Utility revenues are holding up extremely well at this time. So what's the takeaway from this presentation? Other than I need to learn how to operate the system, but while there's work to be done on finalizing the revenues, the overall trend is clear. There is minimal growth in FY 24-25 revenues when compared to the current fiscal year 23-24. Consequently, the fiscal year 24-25 budget will not contain many, if any, new programs or initiatives because we just don't have the revenue growth to support it. That is my presentation for tonight. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any members of the public wishing to ask questions or make comments on this item? Seeing none, do we have any written or Zoom comments, Alicia?
We have none, Mayor.
Thank you. We'll close public comment. We'll bring it back to my colleagues for questions. Mr. Rodriguez.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Mr. Lima, thank you for the presentation. It's always good to have you present that, and I appreciate you putting those 5 of the biggest revenue generators that we have in the city. So just to be clear, our fiscal year ends when?
June 30th. So we're about 4 weeks out.
So I noticed that Measure K has 4.6 collected as of, so we have 1 more month, and we project to get to $2 million more?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I'm looking at a 12-month period. So why is it that in this next month, we anticipate over $2 million in revenue?
Good question. So the sales tax numbers actually represent only 9 months of collection. That was that chart that I showed at the beginning. We actually get, so sales tax that we earn in June, we will not receive until August, but we accrue it back to this fiscal year. So we're actually going to collect 3 more months before this year ends. Is not driven by the June 30th date.
Got it. Thank you. And just to clarify, back on the sales tax, you had mentioned that there was a 3% decrease when you showed us that graph.
Mm-hmm.
You had a $12.1 million in 22-23, and you're anticipating, $13.1 million in 22-23, but you're anticipating a $12 million in 23-24. Is that also representative of 3%?
No, that would be a bigger, our budget, the shortfall from budget is bigger than 3%.
Okay.
Yeah, that is almost 10%.
Okay, so you're saying that 3% in the overall budget?
I'm saying 3% when compared to actual receipts from last fiscal year, from 22-23.
Got it.
We're down 3%.
Thank you. Thank you for explaining that. And again, thank you for the presentation. I guess this kind of gives us a pretty good outlook of what to anticipate for next year based on the sales tax. You mentioned alluded to the cannabis, that if in fact these trends are following, then we can anticipate once we see the receipts that maybe the same applies to the cannabis, because it's also consumption, right? And that's kind of where it's at. So for me and for my colleagues to look at well, what kind of expenditures do we have for this upcoming year? You know, I know that you mentioned that we can cover a lot of the increases that we did, which is fine, but it puts us at a bind if we anticipate on any additional increases, especially when revenues are not coming in. So I just wanted to make sure that that was what you said, at least what I understood. No new programming based on the current the revenues that are coming in, correct?
You heard me correctly.
Right,
that
awesome.
was exactly what I intended to say. Yes.
Thank you. Appreciate your presentation.
Thank you.
Councilmember Mejia.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Lima, for the presentation. You spoke a couple of slides back about new investments that you're going to replace with. Can you talk a little bit more about what the new investments are?
Well, we don't know yet exactly, but the city has an investment policy, which council adopted a few months ago, which spells out what exactly we can invest in. And as you probably remember, mostly what we could do are bonds, CDs, and money market is pretty much what we can do. But bonds right now are paying between 4 and 5%. When these investments were made a couple of years ago, they were only paying about 0.5% or between 0.5 and 1%. So as they are now maturing, we're able to take that money and sink it right back in and earn something that's paying 4 or 5%. So it's going to generate extra cash for us because we're able to do that. But in terms of what specifically, I don't know at this present time, but I know the general categories where we can do.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Seeing no further comments?
I do have one last comment along those lines. So just so we're clear, you mentioned $750,000. So like anything else, a lot of these rates that float out there are based on what the Fed's rates are. I'm not sure if it goes along with the same with the bonds, but
yes.
Are they locked in for a certain period of time?
Yes, we are. We take what's called a ladder approach to investing, which is you try to. You might remember from the investment policy, the maximum we can invest, the maximum duration is 5 years. So we try to buy some bonds that mature in a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, and we are locking in some rates. Usually they're around 4% that are 5 years out. So if the Fed does a rate cut, which they keep talking about, we're locked in and they could cut and we would still be locked in at those rates for up to 5 years. So yeah, we are trying to maximize the interest earnings that we can over as long a period as we can.
And on the flip side, if the Feds increase that rate, then we're locked in at that rate as well, correct? But either way, it's a win-win for the city because they're still gaining some interest on all those investments.
It's better than we are today.
Right.
That's where we're at. And you're absolutely right. And I do not, and I don't want to cast aspersion on my predecessors. That was the market that they were working in, where rates were between 0.5 and 1%. That's just all they had, the options they had. Today, we're in a different market and we're able to take advantage of that. So they did the best they could with the market that they had. So if interest rates go up, like you mentioned, yeah, someone will probably be cursing my name. Why did Lima buy these things at 4%? But I will tell you, you're stuck with the market you have. And as things roll off, you try to invest at a higher rate. And that's what we're trying to do.
But I think you mentioned that your policy says that, hey, every other year or every year, these maturities are coming through, so therefore you can invest in the next upcoming 5 years, right? So I think we cover that, and I think it
try to
balances what we have.
Exactly. We try to do that.
Awesome. Good.
Okay.
Good.
Okay, just checking. Well, thank you very much for that report. Thank you very much. We'll see you in another couple of weeks. Yeah. We now move on to item D, petitions, bids, resolutions, ordinances, and agreements. Item D1 is the city's participation in the 4th of July community event. Mr. Chairmonte.
Mayor, council, members of the public, thank you for the opportunity to present. I have something exciting. We have this year's community event, the 4th of July Spectacular. The 4th of July Spectacular is the fireworks show that goes on annually, as most recently at the Madera Fairgrounds. To give you a little bit of background, I'm here with Greater Madera Kiwani's president, Rohi Zachariah, who is taking the lead on the event. Some background on the event, the city used to put on the event prior to 2017. Due to some budget constraints and then COVID-19, the city was no longer able to provide that support for that event. And in 2022, the service club Greater Madera Kiwani's stepped up and took on the event. In 2022, the company that was to put on the fireworks show actually ran off with the deposit, and it was a last-minute cancel, but they pressed forward, and in 2023 had a very successful event last year at the fairgrounds with a few thousand people in excess there to see the event. This year, the Greater Madera Kiwani's requested provided a letter and requested assistance with police services and requested waiving of the fees of police services. The services provided by our police department would be safety and security at the event and also traffic, both the flow into the event and exiting from the event. Our participation is about 6 officers at about 5 hours of overtime at special event rate, which comes to the total amount of $2,068, and they're asking for relief from those costs. There was a second request on the letter that they provided to the city. The second request was authorizing up to $8,000 in payment should the community not raise the adequate funds to cover the costs. I spoke with the president about what some of those costs entailed, and he informed me it was $31,000 towards the actual firework vendor. And then there was fees associated with the fairground rental, the fire marshal, and miscellaneous fees and licensing that went along with the show. His request for $8,000 is more of a safeguard in case the funds did come up short on the fundraising aspect. They currently do have promises made verbally, and they do have some funds. One of those is a contractual agreement with our trash company, Mid-Valley Disposal, who supports the event annually through contracts of $10,000. We also do have some local businesses, including some of our most recent cannabis industry that is also supporting the event. But leading up to July 4th, they're looking for a safeguard in case those funds don't come fully to fruition. So they're requesting an $8,000 payment should the event not raise the adequate funds. I just want to kind of put out there that this is a community benefit event. It is free of charge, free parking. There is no entry fee. All are welcome. And it's in celebration of our country's independence. So with that, I recommend a few resolutions. The first one is waiving the fees to cover the cost of police services of $2,068. My second resolution recommendation is authorizing up to $8,000 in payment to the Greater Madera Kiwanis should the 4th of July community event not raise adequate funds, and approve a budget amendment to the fiscal year 23-24 operating budget to appropriate general fund balance for payment to the Greater Madera Kiwanis. I will now turn it back over to you, Mayor, and be here for any questions.
Thank you, Chief. Rohi, you have public comment?
Yeah, we just wanted to add that this was something we had brought about last year. And again, it was something we did not have to utilize. It's more of just a safeguard in the event. As you guys got with your budget, some of the donors that we had last year have also tightened their belts and reduced some of their funding. So it was just in a safeguard in the event that we weren't able to get some of the promises that we had already set forward. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any further public comment? We'll close public comment and bring it back to my colleagues for comments and questions. Mr. Montes.
I had a question, Chief, and thank you for the presentation. Did we see a significant impact, or did we see any impact on when we didn't have the public fireworks show to when we did in regards to calls for service for illegal fireworks?
You bring up a great point, and that's a second goal of that is to try and bring the community together for an event where they do actually get to see a great aerial fireworks show, and we can reduce the amount of aerial fireworks happening in our neighborhoods. I don't think we'll ever get that down to a zero, although that's always a goal. I don't have a way of judging other than public comment and feedback, which I did receive that they said it was a quieter year, but I can't say it was 100% associated to last year's event.
I apologize. I probably should have sent you that question before so you can have some of the stats or something.
Oh, I don't mind that. I don't mind that at all.
But at least anecdotally, there was at least a perception that, hey, maybe they were paying attention to the show. And I
did have community members that did comment that they said it was less than the year prior.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And again, thank you, Chief, for providing that presentation. I will say that as a participant of the golf tournament that took place many years back, I think since 2010, the fireworks show would always be at the golf course, which I thought was a great place because you had a golf tournament and then you had your fireworks spectacular. I wasn't part of the council at the time, but little did I know that there was a big expense because one, you're paying off-duty employees on a holiday. And, obviously those amounts do come into play when it comes to budget. But needless to say, the majority of people within our community did not attend that event. And again, it's because you're having to drive in a confined, controlled area that has limited space. Well, the district fairgrounds, I think, are more centered of a core of our community that allows for all of our folks within walking distance. You have your swap meets that are here on Sundays and Wednesdays, and at times you see people crossing. So it's not going to be any much bigger than that. It's a walking distance to a lot of these folks. So I do see that it will have a small impact, but I think doing this consistently will start gathering more attention for people to say, well, it's not worth it me spending this much money when I can go to an event that's put on by the community that has a pretty good show. If you attended last year, you would have seen that it was a really, really good show. At the moment, I know that we've had good commitments, but do know that the city is a partner to this, not only because of the contractual agreement they have with Mid-Valley, but the city has always been at all the meetings that we've had. I also belong to the greater Madera Kiwanis. But you also have commitments that we may get from our counterparts here across the street. They've also have pledged up to $5,000. We've had Spencer Construction. We've had Cannibal. We have commitments from Embark, and we have commitments from Begunda's Farm. So we think we have most of it. I think the safeguard is only to say, in case this doesn't go through, would the city that be willing to put up the additional for the community benefit that we have? So that's what's coming before you. I being part of this effort in trying to bring the 4th of July with that year that we had that mishap. I know there was a lot of people that spoke about it and said, well, it didn't happen, but you know what? It did happen. And now we have a local vendor that we've locked in for the remainder of the years because this is an event that we can have for future years as well. So I look forward to it. I think I'll be participating in that alongside Rohi, Chief, and staff. And I hope that all of you guys go out there because it was a pretty good event. If you guys attended last year, then you guys would have seen. Now, as far as the 8,000, I think that maybe we can bring that down and maybe match to what our counterparts are doing, which is $5,000. I would like to see less of that. And again, I don't know that we're going to have to use it. I think we had the same issue last year, but we didn't bring it before council because we were able to get the commitments. And that would be my request, is that we bring that down to 5,000. And I'm really confident that I don't think we're going to need it.
Councilmember Mejia.
Thank you. As a lifelong regular attendee of the show, I just want to thank you for hosting it, to the Greater Madera Kiwanis for continuing to push for it, and also for bringing it back to a more centrally located location for everyone. It's more accessible for everyone. I really enjoyed it last year, and I'm looking forward to it this year. And I'm in support.
As a member of the Kiwanis, I see how hard you work to making this event happen. Both of you and the rest of the members of the committee have been working very hard to get this thing done. And so I get a sense that we would be supporting this, and I'll ask for a motion.
I so move to approve D1 with the correction of authorizing 5,000 from the city.
I'll second that. And before we move forward, Mr. Mayor, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the other partners. We also have the Rotarians. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is it the noon Rotarians? And then we also have the Evening Lions, of which I think Councilmember Gallegos is part of. So this is a service club event that we're trying to bring all service clubs to come together and bring this to fruition. So with that, I'll second the motion.
Motion by Mayor Pro Tem Gallegos to authorize the city's participation. Second by Councilmember Rodriguez. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Motion passes.
Thank you, Council, for your support, and thank you, Rohi, and the service clubs for your support of the event. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you again. I hope that you guys can make it. It is a great event, and thanks for being there. So thank you.
We now move on to item D2, piggyback purchase agreements for fleet division related purchase.
There I am. Okay. And we go. Good evening, Mayor Council. Mike Lima again. Today is actually kind of a milestone event. It's the we are here to present to you the possible piggyback purchase of an electric truck. It would be the first electric truck here in the city of Madera, as part of the city of Madera's fleet, I should say. Accompanying that is also a budget amendment of approximately $46,000, and I'll get into the details of that in just a second. Let us start off with this discussion by talking about some regulations. The California Air Resources Board, or CARB, developed the Advanced Clean Fleets ACF regulation, which went into effect on January 1st, 2024. This is, if you're aware, the state of California is basically phasing out gas-powered vehicles. All of us will not be able to buy those after, I believe, 2035. And so this is kind of setting the stage for that, or it's an accompaniment to that overall directive. The regulation aims to accelerate large-scale reduction in tailpipe emissions by focusing on zero emission, medium, and heavy-duty vehicles with a gross vehicle weight rating of greater than 8,500 pounds. The ACF regulation applies to state, local, and federal government agencies. This regulation will impact the city's procurement of new vehicles, the installation of charging stations, and our maintenance requirements as well. So what does this regulation say? Effective January 1st, 2024, 50% of all medium and heavy duty vehicle purchases must be zero emission. Starting January 1st of 2027, or about 3 years from now, 100% of our medium and heavy duty vehicle purchases must be zero emissions. So what are we talking about here? We're talking about 3/4 ton pickups, 1 ton flatbeds and utility trucks, dump trucks, and street sweepers. All will have to be electric. We'll have to start purchasing electric by January 1st of 2027. So in this year's budget, we had included funds to replace a 1 ton pickup, which was already scheduled for replacement. This truck is being used by the facilities division. In order to meet the new ACF requirement, the utility truck has been identified as an all-electric vehicle purchase. The one that has been selected for purchase is a Workhorse W4CC. Again, this will be the first all-electric truck in the city's fleet. This is what it looks like, or this is kind of a sample version of it. We're going to take off the lettering and some of the other stuff, but we're going to keep the lightning bolts because they're really cool. No, I'm kidding. We're not. So no, we're going to get rid of those too. But anyhow, but this is what it's going to look like. This is what we're going to is something very similar to this. The vehicle is a all electric. The weight is 14,330 pounds. You might remember 8,500 is the minimum, or anything above 8,500. This vehicle's 14,330. It has a 7,000 pound payload capacity. Outfitted utility bed with various toolboxes and an open storage area. On a full charge, it can go 150 miles. As a mile per gallon electrical equivalent, that's 44. So 44, it would be the equivalent of going 44 miles to the gallon. Charging requirements. Well, there are 3 types of chargers for electrical vehicles. The first is a level 1, which is your basic outlet in the wall. There's a level 2, which is 240 volt, which is about 5 times faster charging than level 1. And then level 3, which are direct current fast chargers. Those are the ones like the Tesla stations that you sometimes see in various areas. Those are DC fast chargers. Currently, the city has, for city fleet, 12 level 2 chargers, 6 at Public Works and 6 at City Hall. These numbers do not include the chargers that are in front of City Hall. These would be the ones in the back only. So we have, and we didn't count those because those are meant for the public, not exclusively for city vehicles. But exclusively for city vehicles, we have 12 level 2 chargers. So to charge the truck proposed for purchase, it will take 11 hours with the level 2 chargers we have. Or down the road, we can invest in a level 3. It will take 3 to 4 hours to fully charge the vehicle. Funding. So we had built in the budget a cost of $82,500 for this truck. The price actually turned out to be, we went to an electric vehicle, turned out to be $189,016. CARB is offering a rebate of $60,000 for vehicles of this size. So our net purchase price is $129,016. So we need a budget amendment, and the budget amendment is for $46,517 to cover the difference between the net purchase price and the budget. Staff is recommending approval of the Sourcewell piggyback agreement with PB Loader Corporation for the purchase of an all-electric utility truck for $129,016.41. And we further recommend approval of the budget amendment in the amount of $46,517 to fund the recommended purchase. That concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Lima. Are there any members of the public wishing to comment on Mr. Lima's presentation? Alicia, do we have any written or Zoom comments?
We have none, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll close public comment on this item. We'll bring it back to my colleagues.
Mike, I have a question.
Okay.
Mr. Rodriguez.
Thank you. So I know we don't have the infrastructure out there yet to be able to get us to that level 3, right? I mean, we don't even know what the cost is. Do we have an idea of what that cost is?
No, I do not have a cost as to what installing a level 3 charger would be. No.
So it seems like we're going to fork out an additional close to $50,000 to try to meet the policies that the state has for us to be zero emissions. But the cost to the city and the general fund obviously is a lot. The burden is on us to try to get to that policy, be zero emissions, and yet we don't know if these electric vehicles will sustain the the capacity that your other hybrids and or fossil fuel trucks would, especially for this type of work that you're doing. So we don't have an idea of what that cost would be to put that infrastructure in, right?
No, I do not have those figures. Yeah, I honestly don't know if they've been spec'd out or not, but no, I do not have those figures.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I just wanted to make a general comment is that, I know the state's initiatives they mean well, but when you put them in practical terms, I think there's a cost behind it, and obviously it's a gain for someone in the electrical industry, but it's a loss for people that have to fork out the money. In that case, this is the city here. So
yeah,
I'm not too thrilled about it yet because the infrastructure is not there statewide, and if we're having to go to that level. We're yet to see how that pans out when it comes to comparing that to what we currently have now. Those are my comments.
Mr. Lima, do we have any level 3s in the vicinity?
Not that are city owned. No, we do not. In terms of within the city limits, I'm not aware of any. I think the closest one is in Fresno. I believe there are Tesla chargers at the El Paseo Shopping Center. That may be the closest. I'm not aware of any here in Madera.
Is there a problem using the Fresno facilities?
I don't think so. I don't think there is.
Open to the public, correct?
I don't believe there is an issue with that. No. Again, even on the high speed, it would be 3 to 4 hours to charge up the vehicle. So you're leaving it there for 3 or 4 hours, or having staff wait there for 3 to 4 hours while you're charging. So there is that issue. But otherwise, no. I don't believe there's any issue with us just utilizing them.
Thank you, Councilmember Mejia.
I am in full agreement with Councilmember Rodriguez. Even though you don't have a figure about the infrastructure, are there the same kind of support from the state government, like in the rebates for the vehicles?
Yeah, there are quite a few grants out there to fund infrastructure development, electric infrastructure development for recharging. I know that we are all looking at those and pursuing those. We don't have them yet, but there is, to answer your question directly, there are monies available. They're in a competitive grant form, and we are pursuing those.
I will add, Samir, that the majority of the weight that's coming, that is going to be battery, right? Obviously to hold that kind of capacity.
Yes.
I mean, and you know, again, you know, I think the technology is not quite where it should be with how we're going to get there. These are steps, but again, it's at a cost.
Yeah,
it's a cost. Unfortunately, it's at a cost.
Seeing no further comments, I'll take a motion.
Move to approve D2.
Second.
Motion to approve item D2 by Councilmember Montes, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Gallegos. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Motion passes. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
We'll now move on to item D3, Schedule A agreement with the California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection, CAL FIRE, from July 1st, 2024 to June 30th, 2025 for fire service operations. Chief?
One moment, Mayor. I'm looking for my PowerPoint here. Go. Yeah, I think so. Lady.
There you go.
All right, thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, Council, and members of the community who are joining us in public and online. Ralph Duran, Battalion Chief of Madera City Fire, CAL FIRE, and today's item is D3, which is the contract for fire protection services between CAL FIRE and the City of Madera. A quick overview of the contract. This contract would be for 1 year, starting fiscal year July 1, 2024, and would carry through to June 30th, 2025. The 1 year agreement is for $6,236,553. And this agreement would cover 23 personnel at our 3 fire stations, 56, 57, 58, and 2 battalion chiefs. So there is no change to personnel staffing or equipment staffing. A little bit of history. We've been in agreement since 1993, so about 31 years with CAL FIRE in Madera City. Initially, in 1993, the city had a population of about 25,000. There were 2 fire stations. I believe there was 5 to 6 people on duty daily, 1 reserve or 2 frontline engines, a reserve engine, a squad, a utility, air trailer, and 1 battalion chief. There was a total of 19 personnel, and again, 5 firefighters were on duty daily. That would be between the 2 stations. Today, with population growth, we're right about 68,000 plus or minus on the last census. And in late 2020, as most of the council is aware, we opened up Station 58 out there on Condor, adding the 3rd station for services within the city. A quick look at how we are today. So each station here up top, 56. Again, all 3 stations have 3 firefighters on duty. So we have a total of 9 daily. That's also where 1 battalion chief, myself, is housed. We have a patrol vehicle and an all-terrain vehicle that assists with like river bottom fires. Station 57, that is off of Schnorr Avenue. So 3 firefighters there as well. We have engine 57 and our reserve engine 257 there. And Station 58, we have 3 firefighters. We have our 2nd battalion chief who is assigned there, and that has the truck, which is a frontline truck, and we have 1 reserve engine 258. I'd also say that we got rid of the air trailer, and we have a air compressor and a lot more modern day infrastructure built there that assists the city and the firefighters daily for our operational needs. Kind of an overview of the last 5 to 6 years of contracts here, starting up top with the one we're proposing today. Followed beneath is the 23-24, which is the contract we're currently under. And as you can see, consistently there has been an increase in services, and that is just due to inflation and labor negotiations and other costs. But this year we are projecting there. You can see is that it is a little bit cheaper, a couple $100,000 cheaper there, and we'll go over as to why that is happening. And you can also see on the far right the historical savings of the contracts. The 2021 was an anomaly, and that was because for that whole fiscal year, Station 58 was budgeted. However, since it opened up later in the year, we had above year average savings, but we're consistently coming in about that 350 average, 300,000 average under budget. This agreement, as we said, was a little bit cheaper, a total about 3% cheaper. The reason for that is the governor has proposed in his fiscal budget for this year a single year buy down, and that buy down is for the unfunded liabilities of like health benefits and retirement for firefighters and throughout the state. That translates to our 3% savings here. That is a single 1 year proposed contribution that the state is increasing for this fiscal year. That was survived in the governor's May revision. That was still in there. It will ultimately be up to the legislators to approve that, but as of now, that is still in the budget and wasn't cut in the May revision. So the scope of work. So the agreement, nothing has changed. The main parts of the agreement are fire protection services. With that comes some preliminary fire investigation. Our EMS response for basic life support. The ambulance company has the advanced life support paramedics. We run the EMTs, are the first responders. And for dispatch services handled through our ECC. Some of the assistance that comes with the contract, there are just auxiliary things that are added in is the river cleanup, which is a pretty, it's something that needs to be done consistent and is a pretty large project that not only the fire department, but multiple departments throughout the city, public works, parks. So we've got to give a shout out to them and thank them for assisting in that. We're also conducting our post-occupancy inspections as required by SP 1205. And we are maintaining tracking and flowing of fire hydrants in conjunction with public works, who does the services of those hydrants. So this contract is a total of 25 personnel, which is 2 battalion chiefs and 23 frontline personnel that ride on the engines. That would give us 10 on duty daily, so 9 on the engines and 1 battalion chief. There prior it was 7. One thing that we are always striving to is that for fire protection, studies in FPA, and the standard is to have 15 personnel for structure fires. So we provide about half of that, and then in conjunction with auto aid agreements with the Madera County are the closest resources outside the city. They support for the remainder of that. Part of this is continuing what we did with this current fiscal year is we're proposing to reclassify 2 of our firefighter 2 positions to engineers. We did that with this contract, and we went from 7 to 5. Now we're proposing to go from 5 to 3. The benefits are that as you progress higher in the ranks, they can always do the subordinate ranks. So right now, firefighters, they provide obviously they're our working force. However, they can't drive, they can't command incidents, they don't act as company officers, they're not trained in pumping evolutions and things of that nature. Whereas if we have as we increase our engineer levels, it essentially increases our service to the community because now we have more people that can fill more roles as needed. Also, with one of the things there is firefighters there's no time commitment for service within the city. They can promote out at any time. Here with engineers, there's a 2-year commitment. So what that does is give us continuity of operations where individuals, sometimes we've had them here for, less than 3 months. Well, now when we have them here for 2 years, they get to learn the city, they get to learn the community, the people, they're first in, and that just makes them more proficient and efficient firefighters, which translate into better service for the city. So we do propose going to 2 more 2 more engineers. So here you can see is our breakdown on the left column with 2 battalion chiefs, 7 fire captains, 11 engineers, 5 firefighters, 1.5 comm ops, and half an office assistant. With this contract, we would propose sorry about that. We'd propose everything would stay the same except for that highlighted areas. We'd go to 13 engineers, and from 5 firefighters, we drop down to 3 firefighter 2s. And again, increasing our engineer staffing. This kind of a breakdown, and you can see here what is, I think it's kind of covered up. The red boxes, which is our unit chief, the deputy chief, and our division chief, Chief McComb, who's here. And I apologize, I didn't mention he is here, but he has some throat issues, so I am presenting. But if he needs to answer some questions, he is over there. Those are all state-funded positions. So the city-funded positions are from my battalion chief level down to the firefighters. And you can kind of see a breakdown currently of how we have 6 individuals assigned to each station. We have 3 personnel for our relief on that 7th day. So they rotate to each houses. And then we have 2 personnel for our vacation relief. Kind of an overview here, an update on kind of how our call volume looks over the last couple of years. You can see here the reds are fires, blue are our calls for medical service, and yellow is our total calls. As you can see, our fire calls and our total calls have been increasing. And so it's that much more important that we have more personnel that are familiar with this and that are have a higher level of training, which again, you know, is one of the reasons why we're asking for those 2 engineers. Kind of breaking down per station, what you can see here is the blue are our vegetation fires, our orange are our structure fires. We have other fires that could be debris fires, cooking fires that don't fall into our 2 major categories of vegetation and structures. We have our EMS calls, standby calls, which could be anything as simple as, hey, there's an emergency thing like a gas smell or something like that. We don't know what it is, but we have fire personnel on standby, and then other calls. And you can kind of see the call volume of how that works out. With the engineers, since station 56 is the most busiest call, the predominant, our plan is for 56 to have the engineers, station 58 with the truck, because that is a little bit more specialized piece of equipment that would also have the engineers, and then 57, some of the relief would have those remaining 3 firefighters. And with that, we recommend approving the resolution as presented and approving the contract. And if you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them.
Thank you. Do we have any members of the public wishing to speak on this item? Any questions? Alicia, do we have any Zoom or written comments?
We have no written comment, Mayor. One moment while we check our Zoom. We have none. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll close public comment on this item and bring it back to my colleagues. Also, Member Mejia.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. In one of the pictures, I saw that you had shopping carts that were in the back of a truck. I'm wondering if the city invoices these corporations for that service.
You know, I'm not sure on that cleanup aspect. I know for a while that we did have the city contracted with a company to clean up, and then part of this general cleanup. I'm not sure if we as the fire department are not invoicing anybody in the city for any of our services. I don't know the process outside of our department for that.
Okay. That was my only question.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor Garcia. Chief Duran, I just want to thank you and the staff and our staff working with you. I was one of those council members that was constantly meeting new firefighters. I was like, wow, you're new. I just saw the team, and we, as you said, we were a revolving door. And my concern with that was, and I expressed that to Chief Watson at the time, was we're having our firefighters go in and out the door, then they don't really get to learn our city. So I thank you for having a foresight to kind of make our firefighters become engineers, to really be a part of this community for at least 2 years before they move up. And I think that just benefits all of us around every corner of this community. So thank you for that. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. And indeed, it does.
Yes.
Councilmember Evans.
Yes, thank you also for the presentation. Thank you for the hard work that you guys do. And thank you for continuing to clean up the river. It's so appreciated. And the fires are very minimal now versus the way they were a few years back. So you guys continue the good work and be safe out there. And thank you for your service.
Thank you.
I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
I second.
Motion to approve item D3 by Councilwoman Evans, second by Councilmember Villegas. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Motion passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And on behalf of myself, Chief McComb, and the rest of the department and the firefighters, we just want to take this opportunity to thank this council, the city manager, and all the support staff for all the support that we get in this. We truly do enjoy being Madera City's firefighters, and we do have a lot of pride in it. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Chief, I hope you get better. All righty, we'll move on to item D4, purchase of real property located at 16564 North Lake Street. Is this a presentation by...
Can you hear me? This is Matthew Bullis, Engineering. Can you hear me? Can everybody hear me? Yes?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Mr. Mayor, City Council, my name is Matthew Bullis. I'm a senior engineer at the engineering department. And the item before you is the purchase of real property at 16564 North Lake Street in Northeast Madera for a water tank facility. This is a picture here of a standard water tank that's going in pretty much throughout the city, the Central Valley. This one here is being built, or it's probably built by now, in the city of Tulare. This is a spiral wound concrete tank, not quite constructed. You can see it's about 35 feet tall, and when it's all done, it'll have the appurtenances on it, and it'll probably be stuccoed a lighter color. They're usually not left like this, but it's just a typical example of what we're looking to install at the site. A lot of times they, to meet the 35-foot height requirement, they'll put the tank in underground about 4 or 5 feet. Need for the water storage. A little background, the city of Madera relies entirely on groundwater for its water supply. We have no surface water that's coming into the city. Currently, we have a water distribution network of 200 miles of water lines, 15,300 or so service connections, one elevated tank that is getting painted as we downtown, as you know, and we had 20, but we currently have 19 groundwater wells. I believe we lost another well out of this system. Then 2014, the Water System Master Plan that was conducted for the city identified the need to provide additional water storage to meet our fire flow needs. I love the pictures of the last event where the fire department was putting out a fire, and I was very proud to say that this tank and other tanks provide that water for their use. The Northeast has the weakest supply of water resources in the city. That's been identified in that master plan, and this project helps to abate that. We're looking at a 2.5 million gallon tank is needed in the Northeast to augment available supplies, meet demand, and support future growth. Background on this, on September 5th, 2018, the city entered an agreement with Carollo Engineers for preliminary design of the water transmission main and a water tank site. This is the tank site I'm talking about. The contract was amended May 1st, a couple of weeks ago, by City Council for completion of the final design for that pipeline and the pipeline that would go to this tank site. So this project goes hand in hand with the design that was approved a few council meetings ago. Excuse me. Background. We had a technical memo that discussing this project, 2019, and at the meeting, the council made the following recommendations. Move forward with the design and construction of a 2.5 million gallon tank with a 5,000 gallon GPM booster pumping station, purchase property for the tank site, which we're doing tonight. We'll make sure the site is large enough to accommodate a second 2.5 mg tank in the future as we need it. Booster pumping capacity to push that water down the line. Design and construction of a 24-inch diameter transmission main from well 38 to the tank site to strengthen the water system. This is an overall water system map. All the blue lines, blue circles show our existing well fields. The area in dark blue, the Northeast, is the area in question. It's one of the harder areas to augment with groundwater. We have a lot of clay in the area, and we have some groundwater contaminants in that area. So that is the needed area. In red, you can see that we've augmented a tank. It's actually pushed up onto Lake Street. So it's in the actual design, it's on Lake Street, not as it's shown here. And the segment goes all the way back up to Avenue 17, over by the truck stop, by the Love's truck stop. And that's where well 38 is located. As I've said, the purpose is to facilitate construction of a new northeast water storage tank. The site will be connected to well 38 over by Love's, located on 99 and Avenue 17 by a 24-inch transmission main. The site is to accommodate two 2.5 mg water storage tanks. However, only a single tank is being conducted right now, and the other area would be for future use. And the tank would be slightly below grade if it goes over the 35-foot design parameter. This is a typical conceptual plan. You saw this before a few weeks ago. This is just a basic outline of how they're proposing the layout of the two tanks. And this is a better map showing what we are doing. You can see up in the left corner, well 38 by Love's. We'll run that transmission line from all the way down the UP Railroad Sharon Boulevard easement, down Ellis, and take a left turn at Lake, and that proposed tank facility is shown on this map. Site selection process, basically we had the consultant provide us with sites that would work for us based on our needs, based on the system. And they evaluated a bunch of sites, and they came back with 10 that they recommended. The sites were evaluated for what they're currently used for, off-sites improvement, costs, surrounding land use, utilities, ease of access, and property value. One of the sites is in the alignment was looked at for commercial development. Commercial property is a lot more expensive than open land, so we dropped that from the queue. A second site was located along the Avenue 17 alignment, which was an alignment we didn't choose for this project. We went down Ellis, so we skipped that one too. That fell out of favor. Letters were sent to the remaining 8 property owners to gauge interest in seeing if they would sell property to us. 2 sites wished to sell a portion of their property. The 2 sites were appraised and evaluated for cost and optimum water use. And of those 2 sites, the 16564 North Lake Street site was selected as the most beneficial parcel for our needs, and it was the lowest price between the 2 sites. City has made an offer, which is attached to the report, for the tank site property at the 16564 Lake Street. The offer is for 2.89 acres of the existing 7.54 acre parcel. Land cost is purchased at $222,000. I want to point out we have willing sellers. This is not an eminent domain process. They are willing to sell the property to us. And the cost for installation of the storage tank, pump station, transmission main, and associated improvements for all of it would be at $23.4 million for the whole project, not just for the storage tank in particular. We are proposed to add a 2.5 million gallon tank at this time. The pump station, electric facilities, generator in case we lose power. We have room for future expansion for another tank. Off-site paving, fencing, and landscaping at the site is proposed in the design. The site in particular is on Lake Street. It's highlighted in red. It happens to be next to the future India Park. And this is an overview of where it would be located on Ellis. It is currently outside the city limits, so we'll have to work with the planning department to work with getting that within city sphere of influence and limits, if I said that correctly. This is the tank site. This is the actual property. As you can see, there's the area we are agreeing to purchase is vacant land. The property owners have 2 properties. two rental properties on site. They will remain to the north. Project funding is through the budget. We have from the Water Utility Fund and specifically from the American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA funds. And these ARPA funds must be obligated by December 2024 for any purchase and expended by December 2026. And we are online to do that with this project. We have various sources of construction funding in the future, water utility funds, impact fees. We've had some congressionally directed community funds in the past. Grants and loans are all available for this project. Staff's recommendation tonight is to adopt a resolution approving agreement for purchase and sale of a portion of real property located at 16564 North Lake Street for $220,000. Joint escrow instructions are attached, and accepting a grant deed for this property. That concludes my presentation. I'm available to answer any questions that you may have, and I appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you, Matt. Excuse me. Thank you, Matt. Are there any members of the public wishing to discuss item D4? Alicia, do we have any Zoom or written comments?
We have no written comment, Mayor, and no one on Zoom.
Thank you very much. We'll now close public comment and bring it back to my colleagues for a motion if need be.
Motion to approve D4 as written.
Second.
Motion to approve item D4 by Councilwoman Evans, second by Councilmember Villegas. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Motion passes. Thank you very much for that, Matt.
Thank you.
We will now move on to item D5, Caltrans State Route 145 Yosemite Avenue Project Cooperative Agreement, Local Only Contribution. Mr. Rios? Or who has this item?
Miss Rios. Yeah, Raquel Rios has it.
Oh, hi, Raquel.
Hi, good evening, Mayor and Council members. I'm Raquel Rios, Assistant Engineer, and tonight before you have the Caltrans State Route 145 Yosemite Avenue Cooperative Agreement, local contribution only. Okay, purpose of this meeting is to consider approval of the cooperative agreement for local contribution only with Caltrans. A quick update about the Caltrans Yosemite project. Caltrans is continuing their design with 95% design plans expected before the end of the year. Construction of the project is still planned for spring of 2025. A little bit of background on the project. At the March 1st, 2023 council meeting, council approved a city contribution of up to $3 million for the purpose of including additional elements to the project that were originally identified in the State Route 145 Yosemite Avenue as downtown Main Street plan. Elements that are included in city contribution are widening of sidewalks between E Street and B Street, replacing existing street lighting with decorative lighting fixtures, adding decorative street lighting fixtures where fixtures are missing, installing rectangular rapid flashing beacons at certain unsignalized intersections, and landscaping within proposed medians and along the street. The elements previously mentioned are in addition to other items Caltrans currently has in their scope of work, which includes a road rehab, the Yosemite Avenue road diet, roundabouts at Lake Street, C Street, and D Street, bulb outs at A and B Street, enhanced crosswalks, a center median island along Yosemite, and sidewalk in areas where it is currently missing. For Caltrans to continue the design of the project, the city commitment of $3 million must be formalized into an agreement, that being the cooperative agreement. As written, the cooperative agreement strictly adheres to the criteria required by Caltrans. Deviation from the standard agreement Caltrans uses would require approval of changes at Caltrans headquarters or preparation of a different agreement, referred to as a project development agreement. Both of these options would delay the process at a time Caltrans indicates is time sensitive. As currently written, the agreement states the city is contributing $3 million without recognizing a circumstance in which costs do not match or exceed this value. Under most circumstances, staff would not support this and would prefer provisions in the agreement, such as not to exceed $3 million for city contribution. However, staff is of the opinion actual costs will likely be greater than the $3 million. This opinion is based on the following items. The most current cost estimate that the Caltrans team provided of $2.9 million was completed on January 21st of 2024. One or more items, such as upgraded lighting finishes at the roundabouts, are not currently included in that referenced estimate. And that estimate also is based on current year values rather than an adjusted amount for when the project actually bids for construction in the spring of 2025. Caltrans project manager has also indicated that costs are escalating at a rapid rate for most Caltrans projects. And as indicated at that March 1st, 2023 council meeting, council authorized use of local transportation funds for the city contribution of this project. At that meeting, staff indicated the potential to use regional surface transportation program funds. Given the current timing of the initial deposit associated with the agreement, staff is recommending use of RSTP funds to the degree eligible per the funding source requirements. As subsequent invoices are received, staff may elect to use either funding source based on council's approval. And although not included in the report, staff is presenting another item for council direction on the project. At the February 7th, 2024 council meeting, staff informed council that decorative lighting would be installed along Yosemite in the downtown area in areas where it is currently missing. Due to Caltrans safety lighting standards at roundabouts, it was determined that much more lighting is required at the roundabouts. The Caltrans electrical team informed staff of the need for safety lighting approaching and at the roundabouts. This would eliminate the amount of city standard decorative lights to be replaced with standard Cobra head fixtures on stainless steel poles. Staff requested Caltrans design team look into the use of decorative lighting fixtures rather than the typical stainless steel poles that adhere to the Caltrans safety lighting standards at the roundabouts. Utilizing the decorative lighting will allow the city to achieve a cohesive vision for the downtown plan while also allowing Caltrans to obtain their required lighting standards. The Caltrans design team has provided staff 2 alternative fixtures, as well as 3 different poles for either fixture option, which would still adhere to their safety lighting standards. This first example is more of a bell-shaped example. And on the left, you'll see it being used in public, and then a little close-up of the actual fixture. And then these are the 3 pole options that would go with that fixture. And then this is the second fixture option that the Caltrans team provided, and with the close-up of the fixture head as well. And then these poles coincide with that fixture. And then just to show what the existing decorative lighting along Yosemite looks like, are these 2 pictures. And then all the decorative lighting will be black to coincide with what is already existing. And then our recommendation tonight is to adopt a resolution approving the cooperative agreement for local contribution only with Caltrans in the amount of $3 million. And to provide staff with direction on the decorative lighting fixtures and pole options to be used at the roundabouts. And with that, that concludes my presentation, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you for that, Raquel. Are there any members of the public wishing to speak on item D5? Lisa, do we have any public comment, either written or Zoom?
We have none, Mayor. Thank you.
Then we will close public comment on item D5 and bring it back to council for a motion and discussion.
Motion to approve item D5. Okay, go ahead.
Excuse me, a second. Mr. Montes.
Yeah, no, I just have the question. So you want, staff wants direction on which decorative lighting to use right now? So it's the 3 options. I didn't see them in our packet.
Yeah, we didn't include in the packet. They were included tonight in the presentation, but it'd either be, it's between two fixtures, and then each fixture has an associated pole that.
You need that decision right now.
Keith?
I
apologize for the late notice on this. These fixtures and poles were only received in the last week or so. The consultant for Caltrans had been working to go ahead and get them, but it didn't happen until, again, the last week or so. As far as the poles, what we have out on the street right now, they're black poles. So there's really no color choice, but there is the choice of the fixture and the choice of the pole type.
If I may just add something, if it would be okay by council, I would recommend that we postpone the poll discussion simply because the item was not agendized, and that was my oversight, so I apologize for that. So tonight, if it would be appropriate, staff would recommend that we continue with the commitment of the $3 million as being requested by Caltrans with no amendments to their standard agreement. However, at the June 19th meeting, we can bring back the light pole discussion if that's appropriate. I do apologize for that.
So we can't even continue discussing the polls because it's not agendized.
Correct.
Okay, thank you very much. Councilwoman Mejia.
Thank you. I am in agreement with that recommendation. When it's brought back, would we also be able to know how strong the lighting is? Because I know that's a common complaint that I get from residents as far as the existing fixtures.
The lighting, I'm trying to think of the standards that are used, but the Caltrans uses federal standards, so it's the lighting level that's intended for safety of the roadway. It's not likely to be what you might hope for pedestrians to feel safe. It will be substantially better, I suspect, than what we have today, which is a light here and there. That's probably the best I can do. When it gets to the roundabouts, it sounds as if it's going to be quite bright because they're working under another standard. At one time, there would have only been, I'll go ahead and say, like 4 lights at the roundabout. Now it sounds like there will be like 8 lights. So from a pedestrian standpoint, crossing through the roundabout, it'll be safer. The roundabout on its own will be safer for crossing as well.
Thank you. And then just confirmation on the timeline, because it seems it took us 15 months to bring this back to formalize it. What was the delay?
I think we received the amendment probably several months ago, or the agreement several months ago. There was at one point in time where I personally thought it would be okay for that to go a little bit longer until we were able to go ahead and get a good idea of what the cost estimate was going to be. So we got a pretty good cost estimate back in January or so. It was in the last month or so that they said we must have that agreement before they move forward. That kind of surprised me. They didn't seem to be in too much of a hurry. But yeah, it is kind of what it is. But yeah, I would have liked to go quicker in one respect and a little bit slower in another.
Okay, so we can still expect all of this to start seeing it in spring of 2025.
That's what I'm being told. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
We have a motion by Councilwoman Evans. Is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
Second by Councilmember Montes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you very much for that report, Ms. Rios.
Thank you, Mayor and council members.
Next item is item D6, Measure T 2024 Draft Expenditure Plan. Ellen?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'll be introducing our speaker for this topic. My name is Ellen Bitter with the Engineering Department. Tonight, I would like to introduce Dylan Stone with the Madera County Transportation Commission. Will be presenting this item. just briefly, at their May 29 meeting, the Madera County Transportation Authority Board took action requesting that the local jurisdictions consider the Measure T 2024 draft expenditure plan, and that's what's being presented tonight. Get it?
Yes. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you, Ellen. Mayor Pro Tem, and council members, I'm Dylan Stone from NCTC. I'm giving this presentation for Kendall Flint tonight, who wasn't able to attend. You have had a few presentations over the past year on this, so this is our latest with where we're at the project phase for the Measure T outreach program and what they've developed for the expenditure plan. They being the Citizens Oversight or Steering Committee. Our steering committee is made up entirely of citizens of our very diverse county, representing all aspects of it, from age, socioeconomic situation, geographic distribution, and other factors as well. So with that, I will discuss a few key points from the draft Measure T expenditure plan. There we go. Okay, so Measure T will have a 20-year horizon for this extension. That was an important aspect of our previous efforts to have a clear, defined time frame for this measure. The Citizen Steering Committee has had a lot of very healthy and constructive conversations about the distribution categories for the measure and how they change from our existing measure. And they've taken consideration from a lot of polling we've done over the past year, last winter and this spring in particular. They've learned a lot from your staff, as well as the staff from Madera County and the city of Chowchilla, on what is a transportation projects, what are the unique transportation projects all the different areas of our county have, and really what goes into getting them from vision to plan to construction to delivered for the public to use and to maintain as well. With that, they have come up with a distribution category breakdown that really enhances the local streets and roads program, a lot more really local control on the projects that are really fine-tuned for your communities, having a lot of different needs. You know, for example, there's a lot of different types of projects in the rural area, in the mountains. There's a lot of different concerns related to fire safety and evacuation. But there's different projects in the city that are really important here, as far as safe routes to school, working on some of the alleys and other local roadway systems that need improvements. So they've really learned a lot from your staff and the agencies on what this local program can entail and how that can be enhanced. And in the polling I mentioned, that was the most important category, the top priority of citizens across the entire county. So they've really emphasized an increase in that, as well as a 10% set aside for disadvantaged communities, which is a very proactive approach that is really trailblazing for transportation measures in California, if this was to be approved. They've distributed 14.5% for the regional program. These are generally larger projects that very aggressively seek federal and state support funding through grants or other programs. The projects that do tend to be a little more expensive. This is a reduction from what was in the current measure. As we said, more emphasis is put on the local streets and roads distribution category. There's also a doubling of percentage to transit from 2 to 4% through this. And there is 1.5% for administration of the measure, as well as staff working to support the COC, which is the Citizens Oversight Committee, and having an expanded role for oversight by citizens of the measure, which was a key concern in years prior and something that the Citizens Steering Committee felt was really important to bolster. In terms of distribution to the jurisdictions, they considered several different options and really felt that population was the most effective way to distribute the funds to the two cities and the county. And this is something that is updated every year by
census data or working with the California Department of Finance. So each year we look at that in terms of how we distribute these funds out. And I did mention the Citizens Oversight Committee, really looking at how there can be better oversight and better understanding from the public and the citizens on how this measure works, how it is effectively being administered, how these projects are meaningfully being delivered to the communities. So there was a significant effort on making sure there was adequate representation on the Citizens Oversight Committee from all the supervisor districts, that there wouldn't be any elected officials or staff from the cities that were going to be on that board. It would just be regular folks, as they said during our meetings. The members would be chosen by an independent panel. Currently, they're chosen by the Madera County Transportation Authority Board. With this independent council, it would be the current chair of the Citizens Oversight Committee, or an MCTC staff representative, and then one mutually agreed upon person. Those two people would ask to join them to make that selection. They would up the amount of meetings they have to be quarterly, with annual reports as well, and other presentations about projects that are being delivered by the jurisdictions at those meetings. There would be an independent auditor selected by the Citizens Oversight Committee, and the Citizens Oversight Committee chair would appear at the MCTA board meetings on a quarterly basis to give an agendized item and report on the status of the measure and the Citizens Oversight Committee activities. So I'm going to talk a little bit about where we are in the process. We have our draft expenditure plan that we talked about tonight. That is available on our website if you want to read it, at Madera County, maderactc.org. We, as Ellen mentioned, the MCTA board approved the expenditure plan to be distributed out to the agencies for your action tonight. We'll have a similar action or request a similar action from the Board of Supervisors and City of Chowchilla on June 11th. On June 12th, there will be a reading of the ordinance as well as approval of the plan by the MCTA board. And then on June 19th, there will be the second reading of the ordinance, and the MCTA will consider asking the Board of Supervisors to place this on the ballot for this November. And then finally, on July 2nd, the Board of Supervisors will consider placing Measure T renewal on the ballot. So with that, I'm available to answer any questions. And I guess I don't know if I turn it over to you for this item, or is this my action?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Are there any members of the public wishing to speak on item D6?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sandra Uribe. I'm a policy advocate for Leadership Council with Justice and Accountability. I work closely with the communities of Fairmead and Lavina, and with the and I know that there's a lot of work that's been done with the city elected officials, with the steering committee, with MCTC, and I know everyone's trying to put the best measure forward. And I know because of how much work has been put into this, that's why I feel so passionately about ensuring that this measure really does represent all of the community visions. From my perspective, I've reviewed this measure many times, and I've been talking to community members, and there are still things that are lacking in this measure to really comply with all of the community demands and requirements, and to really comply with them. I sent over a comment letter earlier that has more detail than what I will provide here. I'll try to keep this comment short, but some of the things that I've noticed are missing are, there was a lot of community engagement done to make sure that this measure passes. Let's ensure that this measure will also have this type of community engagement moving forward, that there will be proper and adequate community engagement before each annual work plan is addressed and put together by each local jurisdiction. Afterwards, let's also ensure that there's a 30-day public comment period so that residents have the opportunity to review this, and that they have the opportunity to say, yes, I'm in support of this, or no. Right now, as it is, the agenda could drop, for example, like on a Thursday and go up to the Board of Supervisors for Madera County on Tuesday. That really doesn't leave a lot of time for residents to truly engage. Also ensuring that funds are used exclusively for existing communities, that funds will not be used for capacity expansion projects, and provide more details of like, what does it mean when the measure calls for road widening? What does it mean for like safety measures? The categories are currently very broad, and I don't think that at this moment, like it's appropriate for residents to really support or for elected officials to show their support when there's so much information missing from the measure. And also ensuring that one of the biggest things that is being promoted about this measure, it's that 80% is going to be going to local streets and roads. However, the last bullet from the categories that are approved for this category is that says that funds can also go to regional projects, and there are no boundaries drawn there. If the funds say that they're going to stay for local streets and roads, then I think that they should stay there. Additionally, I know that one of the biggest wins that community members saw within this plan and that's being promoted is to having a set aside for disadvantaged communities. I'm so proud of all the advocacy that has been done, and I know that it's something that is being promoted as like being forward thinking, and I'm glad to see it there. However, I want to make sure that it truly is representative of community needs. The set aside is 10% of the 80%. However, there are so many different categories and tools that can be used to classify a community as disadvantaged. There's a climate and economic justice screening tool. If a community is surrounded by more than 50% of poverty rate around the areas, they can use the California Climate Investment Priority.
I want to thank you for your comments, but your 3 minutes are up.
Okay, so I just urge you to take your time in putting this measure for and taking into consideration what it would look like to really make the edits and make this the best measure moving forward, and to make the current edits for this measure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Alicia, do we have any written comments or Zoom comments on this item?
We have none, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, then we will close this item and bring it back to council for comments and a motion. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor Garcia. Councilman Rodriguez and I sit on MCTC, and we said this at the meeting. I'm going to say it here for our residents and for the community, is that everyone on this committee really did justice this year. And like Mr. Stone said, we're trailblazing. We're putting a set aside 10% for disadvantaged communities, whereas no other city has done that. I was an advocate about the disadvantaged communities, like Fairmead had come to our meeting several times. Chowchilla has come to our meeting several times. Lavina's come to our meeting several times. And they were concerned that they're not getting the things that they need. And I don't have my notes here, so quote me if I'm wrong. One thing is the 10% of the 80% is going to be $170,000 that we're setting aside for disadvantaged communities every year. Before, we've used $300,000 probably in the last 7 to 10 years for those disadvantaged communities. So this is a big win for our little communities that surround us in the city and in the county. So I just want to thank my colleagues for being very supportive of this and all the work that's gone into it, and our MCTC staff for this, and our city staff that has also been a part of these meetings that have gone on to make this a great plan for everyone across the board. Is that kind of right with my numbers, Dylan? Close?
You're close enough. I think so.
I don't have my notes, so I was trying to think in my head. So that's it, Mayor. Thank you.
Councilmember Rodriguez.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I wanted to thank Dylan for the presentation, stepping in for Kendall Flint. Also, I just wanted to thank the comments that were made by Ms. Uribe. Dylan, can you let us know what the current expenditure plan is for like regional projects right now? What's the amount that's categorized for that?
The local streets and roads and the regional program are almost, I think, 46 or 48%. Or so it's the majority, and it's almost half going to both. So this is a huge shift off of the regional program from the existing measure and onto local streets and roads program.
So in our previous attempt with this measure, again, as you mentioned, it was a lot of people within the community, staff, electeds, and other organizations that were part of that steering committee. And we came to a consensus, we had a lot of people obviously giving their feedback, but we came to a consensus that we had reduced some of those amounts. But obviously, it didn't really meet a lot of the counties, because it's 3 different agencies, but it didn't really meet some of the folks up in the northeast part of Fresno and some of the other organizations that were really not in favor of it. So this time around, like you said, we did a little different. We stepped aside and we let the community speak out on where their needs would be best met. And going from almost 42% to 14% for regional projects and allowing more of that money to be allocated to the city's, capital improvement plan when it comes to transportation, that's huge. That's huge. And one of the things that we do here at the city is whenever we're here doing our 5-year capital improvement plan and any transportation dollars are being utilized, we're doing it in a public hearing where people can come and voice their opinion as far as how we best want to utilize those funds. I think in previous conversations, we've heard from the city that the majority of those funds that we do receive do go to our roads and streets, paving and what have you. There's a good portion of it that goes to the maintenance and operations of that. So for the city, I mean, that's a huge win. That's a huge shift on how we utilize that. I do agree that there could be some improvements, but nevertheless, this is a plan that was approved by these folks that come together. And again, not all folks really agreed on the previous time. Here you had all the folks come unanimously approving this expenditure plan. I do agree that with disadvantaged communities, the definition and the language does need to be a lot clearer, more specific, because in some of these cases, a disadvantaged community could be Tesoro Viejo, could be a Riverstone, and those don't quite apply, at least in my opinion. I think it's more the economic burdens that they face. But again, I do understand that there is disadvantages because in many of these areas, there could be roads that are not maintained, and that could be considered disadvantage. I mean, as Ms. Uribe mentioned, there are certain tools that either the state or the federal recognize these are communities that are disadvantaged because there's probably 20 different categories that one of them could be economic, one of them could be roads, access to roads, resources, and what have you, and that again is considered disadvantage. I would like to see that language also a bit more specific because there are communities that haven't seen a lot of these improvements. In the city of Madera, we have many disadvantaged communities, but I think when it comes to those types of conversations, we've had those conversations with sidewalks become a big issue, right? Well, we want to see sidewalks on this side of town. We want to see roads, traffic signals, and what have you. Anything to do with transportation. Here, I think it's a win-win for the city with this expenditure plan. At the same time, we do leave some money aside for regional projects. I don't think we want to call them widening. I think it's more main arterials and or projects that we share regionally. Of course, your 99, you have your 41. This is what gets us from one place to another. We're not living in a very urban area where everything's condensed and urbanized. We're in rural communities where you need these roads. People need to get to work, and utilizing the freeway this is a gateway to get to their destination. Unlike other cities where you have the BART or you have these other systems of transportation, we don't have that luxury here. So we have to depend on those regional projects for sure. With that, I just want to express my comments. I am in support of the expenditure plan as it looks today, with the exception of making sure that we're specific on those disadvantaged communities.
If I may, there's just a couple things I wanted to touch on. That you were right that there was an effort in 2022 that while it did get a majority of support from the county voters, it needs 2/3. There was a considerable amount of time spent by the Citizens Oversight Committee listening to the biggest concerns people who didn't support the measure had. And in our presentation, and I think it really touched on almost all of those, really, shifting the allocation, having better control for local projects and the diversity of projects that exist all throughout the county. And as you mentioned, the oversight committee itself that steered, or the steering committee itself that formed this expenditure plan, they wanted to be more citizen-driven. This is entirely citizen-driven now. And as well as having the additional oversight. And some of the comments we received of the draft at our MCTA meeting last week about having like 30 days review each year before the local agencies' plans go out. I think that's actually a perfect idea to make sure the citizens can continue to have this engagement on the process. The language we had regarding the disadvantaged communities themselves, I'm a planner, so when we had that conversation, in fact, during the citizen steering committee meeting, when that was coming up, I was like getting on my maps because I look at a lot of those maps all the time. And I know many of them go by census tract level data. And we don't have a big enough population for census tract level data to work that well sometimes. And for the perfect example is Lavinia is in the same census tract as Riverstone or Tesoro Viejo. So that means you got to look closer. And there are tools that let us look at block group level, or we can get profiles of census designated places that can really tell the true story. So no one's ever going to try to argue that Tesoro Viejo is disadvantaged, because that just wouldn't fly with anybody. We can't do stuff like that. So we do want to ensure that that program is really used with that 10% set aside in the spirit it's meant to be used.
And I think that was in spirit of what that steering committee, exactly. They made sure that was because, again, they heard the voices from the people coming together and saying, set aside. I mean, because historically, this has never been done before.
And it did, as you mentioned, had unanimous support from every member of our committee to push this forward and to give it to you guys to consider.
And those are my comments, Mr.
Councilmember Mejia.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I think that voters spoke loud and clear when they put the brakes on this. I feel like even though we had good steps in community engagement, there was a lot of barriers to it, a lot of new voices. The barriers that I'm talking about this, it could have been more culturally inclusive. It was very difficult for it truly to be reflective of the entire community, even though there is a 10% set aside for disadvantaged communities. When you think of it in the historical context, it's a good step, but it's not a huge one. So, I mean, I would be in favor of not rushing this and just giving it more time to have these factors, these recommendations for people to participate and for us as a council to think this through. Those are my comments.
Seeing no further comments, I'll accept the motion.
Is there a motion?
There's no motion. Yeah, motion.
Yeah.
That's a motion.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I just wanted to make a quick comment on, the previous measure. Looking at the survey, and obviously it needs 2/3, but we did it in a midterm election where there wasn't really a big turnout of people coming out there, disadvantaged or not disadvantaged. The people that were very vocal were people up in the northeast of Madera County. And again, they had a dissatisfaction not only with the current plan as it was presented from the steering committee at the time, but also with the board, the makeup of the board. I think their beef was more so with county, not so much the city, but it affects us because we all have to work together to bring this to the voters because we depend on that. This is due to sunset in 2026. So we need to make sure that we have some sense of security when it comes to these particular funds. So I understand that, during these midterm elections, not too many folk go out there and vote, and that's unfortunate. But we as a body need to do a better job also of going out there and advocating of the importance of it, because the only way Kendall had mentioned that this would pass also is if we have this, it has the support of its elected officials, that we have to buy into it, that we have to let our community know why it's important to us, how we showcase it. Whenever you travel down the 99, whenever you travel down these roads, SB1 dollars or your tax dollars, that is Measure T dollars. And we need to do a better job of letting the people know how these dollars impact you. Well, here's how we leverage millions and millions of dollars because of this project. We don't do a good job of that. So we just need to do a better job of making sure we get the message out, and hopefully people get to see how important it is. So those are my comments. I'm going to support the expenditure plan as it's presented, and I will make a motion to approve it as it's presented.
Going to have one more comment.
Sure. The
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. And again, I apologize, Dylan. I had a meeting before this meeting, so I don't have my notes. When it did go to the voters in the city, the percentage was very high for passing Measure T, correct? Do you remember the percentage?
They had the highest percent. I don't remember the exact percent, though.
Okay, yeah, the city of Madera had the highest percent. Okay, thank you. So with that, I second the motion.
Motion by Councilmember Rodriguez, second by Mayor Pro Tem Gallegos on item D6. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Can we have a roll call vote, please? Alicia?
Yes. Mayor Pro Tem Gallegos?
Yes.
Councilmember Rodriguez?
Yes.
Councilmember Montes?
Yes.
Councilmember Evans?
Yes.
Councilmember Mejia?
No.
Councilmember Villegas?
Yes.
Mayor Garcia?
Yes.
Motion passes with 6 yes votes and 1 no vote.
Thank you very much for that presentation. Look forward to seeing you again. We will now move on to item D7, temporary authority for the city manager to offer higher than C-step for deputy city engineer, senior civil engineer, and senior planner candidates. Wendy, do you have this item?
I do, sir. Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Can you see the presentation? Just confirming?
Yes.
Yes. All right. So within the city's civil service system, each position is assigned to a 6-step range on the city salary schedule. Basically, we call them steps A through F. Under the personnel rules, the city manager can offer new hires within the civil service system, steps A through C. He's limited to the 3rd step of the salary plan. So the proposal is to authorize the city manager to offer up to top step for certain positions for a period of 12 months. So it's a temporary authorization for 12 months for the positions of deputy city engineer, senior civil engineer, and senior planner. The reason being that the candidates applying for these positions are typically well-seasoned professionals in their field. They generally work for other public agencies and are at the top of their range already. And so it's a hard sell to get them to take a pay cut to come work for us. So if approved, the city manager would have discretion to offer starting pay at a higher step. It would not automatically mean everyone was offered a higher step. He would evaluate their education and experience in support of offering something other than A through C. If approved, the temporary authority would end after 12 months. I can answer any question.
Thank you very much, Wendy. Are there any members of the public wishing to speak on this item? Do we have any Zoom or written comments on this item?
We have none, Mayor.
Thank you very much. We'll close public comment and bring it back to my colleagues for questions and a motion.
I so move to approve D7 as presented.
I second.
Got a tie.
I second.
Okay, it's mine.
Second.
Mine. Motion by Mayor Pro Tem Gallegos, second by Councilwoman Mejia to approve the item. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? The ayes have it. Motion passes. Thank you very much, Wendy. We now move on to item E, administrative reports. Item E1 is Madera Sub-Basin Joint Groundwater Sustainability Plan, GSP, reconsideration of 5-year evaluation and update of the GSP. Mr. Helm.
It didn't work.
I think the picture is stubborn. There we go. Thank you, Alicia.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. So the purpose of this meeting is to look at the update and consideration of the 5-year evaluation and update of the GSP. This was just looked at a couple of weeks ago. The background to this is the last update to City Council. Well, actually, it was a little bit longer than back on April 3rd, 2024. The update focused on the city's contribution towards the cost of preparing the 5-year update to the revised groundwater sustainability plan due to the Department of Resources on January 31st, 2025. Council directed that city offer a contribution proportional to the number of acres it has within the subbasin itself. Currently, that's estimated at about 3.7% or about $16,200 of the total cost of the update that the consultant came up with. Following receipt of the city's proposed contribution, the County of Madera indicated the need for all agencies to commit to the same methodology. That was a bit different than what I had heard originally from them. So when this was pushed back, I was a little bit surprised and found I needed to revisit council. The methodologies included an equal split, which was $109,727. The split that council had agreed to was 3.4% at the time, which is now 3.7%, or about $16,200. And then actual effort. When I was at council last, we did not have an estimated cost. I did not, I knew there was going to be more. I did not necessarily estimate that it was $95,000 or so, but that is based upon the consultant looking at the tasks that would generally be shared. You know, the cost of preparing the report, the cost of running the models, and so on. When they put that together and then attempted to go ahead and separate out the agencies, they came up with $95,000. The other GSA, the status of the other GSAs regarding the methodology. I got a little bit more detail from the county this morning or this afternoon. I was trying to understand what they would do to sticking with the 3.7% or so. So they indicated that the 4 GSAs do need to agree on a common methodology. The county GSA is open to multiple methodologies. In fact, they noted that they are in 3 different subbasins. This Madera subbasin is just one of those subbasins, and 2 of those other subbasins are using acreage as the methodology. This will be the first time that the city has, they noted, most of these bullets are them noting things right now. They noted that this will be the first time that the city has had to pay out of its own pocket the GSP development costs since 2017. The original cost of the GSP was about $1.5 million. Revisions were another $300,000, and then there was a model update for $350,000. Dividing that 3 ways, the total comes up to about $500,000. They describe that as a benefit to date to the city. That's not completely accurate. The county was repaid through grants for those funds later on, so they had a dollar of the value of the dollar carrying the interest for a number of years. And through the time since the original GSP, we have paid equal shares on the annual report. Those equal shares have only been $25,000 or so per year. They also know that there's an alternative, and this is a little bit, I guess I'd call it a little bit blunt. There's an alternative that the city could write their own plan. It would be $300,000 to $500,000 at the low end. That is probably pretty accurate. The city would have had to pay a substantial amount to do that. That's been noted in past staff report, the past staff report as well. And then they also know that theoretically we could agree on one methodology in 2024, but change in the future. That's the county right now. Moving on to the Madera Water District, MWD, they haven't really indicated one way or the other that I found in writing or remember them saying. MID itself, they appear to support the actual effort methodology. It actually benefits them, of course, because they do represent more than 1/4 of the Madera subbasin. Recent correspondence from them simply asked the other GSAs if they were supportive of this particular methodology. I don't know exactly what that meant, why they were asking that question. I assume that might mean that they're willing to go ahead and look at different ways, but I didn't really get a chance to ask them that question straight out. With regard to the reconsideration, staff continues to be of the opinion that a split either by GSA acreage or actual effort should have been the only methodologies considered. That's what staff discussed at the last report. Staff's opinion is unchanged that the city would have paid substantially more than any of the available options had it prepared its own GSP. Recent county correspondence seeks to remind the city of that fact, which I just mentioned in the previous slide or two. And staff believes that the current value of the actual effort can probably be viewed as a not to exceed amount. The consultant, when they came up with the $95,000 number, they acknowledged that they would learn more as they were actually doing it, but looking at it in advance, they couldn't really get there. Tonight's action is to provide direction on a 5-year update level participation, actually a reconsideration of that participation. That completes my presentation. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Keith. Are there any members of the public wishing to comment on this item? Do we have any Zoom or written comments on this item, Alicia?
We have none, Mayor.
Thank you very much. I'll close public comment and bring it back to council for questions and a motion.
Direction.
Motion to approve.
You want to give
It's a direction.
you want direction, right?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Whatever council directs, I will make that offer to the county, actually to the group. There is a group email discussing this, and we are the last ones. Well, we'll be the third to last to respond, and MWD, Madera Water District, still has not said. It would be my guess that they're looking to see what the city's lead will be.
Thank you. Mr. Rodriguez.
So based on what I just heard on your staff report, Keith, we're still in the opinion that we stick to both the, obviously the acreage was probably the more favorable for us, right? Because that only pays.
Yeah, it's quite obviously more favorable, but we would, if we were to do this on our own, we would be in the $300,000 to $500,000 range.
So I'm assuming that what the best effort would be the better route for all agencies. I mean, is the county okay with that as well?
I'm sorry, best effort or actual effort?
Oh, the best based on actual effort. I'm sorry.
Yes.
You mentioned that the county had changed their position. Can you elaborate on how that?
Before I went to the last meeting, I had verbally confirmed with the lady who is in charge of the Water Resources Department. And then I believe I reconfirmed before I actually put it into the staff report for council. But after I had the recommendation, it appears as though I'm guessing that she learned that wasn't going to fly, probably at a supervisor level.
Arnoldo, would you like to chime in on this?
I'm not certain that I have a very passionate position either way. I think the most favorable position would be per acre, which is what council recommended back in April. I continue to believe that that's the fairest, simply because we also have the smallest amount of acreage. Now, in the spirit of cooperation, sometimes we do have to give a little bit. If council, I think, is going to consider an alternative, And again, I'm not going to give a passionate plea this evening about giving an alternative, but if I were, it would probably be based on actual. But I also agree with Keith that there should probably be a not to exceed number in the agreement without that item coming back to council before too much is spent, because an actual could easily increase without us knowing, and then all of a sudden we're hit with a large bill that, quite frankly, I think is unfair, because we do have a very small amount of acreage within the plan area. It's only 3.7%. It comes down to an equity issue, and I struggle whenever I feel like anyone's attempting to take advantage of the city.
Thank you. Councilmember Montes.
So all GCs have to agree, right? So even the actual is not as favorable to the county. And that's what they're saying, that they're okay, because in the county they're at 152, everybody else is at 95, right? Based on your chart here.
As I recall, the actual from the report is Madera Water District, City of Madera, and Madera Irrigation District are all 95,000 something, 427.
And the county is at 152, 490.
Yeah. So the county is paying more than 1/4 based upon that. The county, the MID, I would guess, is paying less, substantially less than their amount per acre. Madera County, I didn't figure out, but they may be about right. I'm not sure, but I think that the county is probably better off on actual effort.
Yeah, and they would be for acreage, same thing. That's what the calculation the MID is making. So what will happen if Madera Water District, because they're by far the smallest, if they say, hey, we want to stick with our own, it'll be cheaper for them? Are we all back in the same?
I'm surprised that they didn't chime in. Again, I think that they're waiting for our lead.
So if they dissent, right? So say everybody, the MID, city and county say, we'll do actual, right? And then Madera Water District says, no, I want to stick to acreage. Even if I have to do my own, it won't be as expensive. Will we be in that same boat where we therefore would then have to do our own?
I think if they say no and we want to do acreage, this potentially falls apart. I think if they said no, we only want to do acreage, and the county said sure, we would change our approach as a city. It is a little bit complicated. There's any number of things that I suppose can happen. The county has indicated that they have already entered into the agreement with the consultant. They are moving forward. They started asking questions of agencies to try to build their database for the update. I don't know that the county would stop all efforts at this point if we couldn't come to a conclusion.
Yeah, and so obviously my preference would be acreage, but again, in the spirit of cooperation, because if we say no, then we end up having to pay $300,000, $400,000.
Yeah,
we really didn't help ourselves.
Yeah, I took over on this, I think it was 4 years ago or so. The county did note through this time that they had been covering many of these costs themselves, and it's not just the cost of the study. It's they did put additional staff time into it that they are apparently not seeking to recoup. They have managed the effort to a fairly large degree, I would imagine.
Councilmember Rodriguez.
Yes. Keith, take me through the actual effort. Like what exactly, how do you break that down? Actual effort.
I'd probably have to pull up the the email from the consultant, and I can do that if not. Well, actually, it's in the staff report.
There's a table in there.
I get that, but that's just showing us that we're splitting certain things equally, right? I mean, it's from your tasks there, but maybe for me, it's harder to cope with the fact that you're basing this on equal stuff. When you say best efforts, I mean, or actual efforts, what exactly efforts are we doing? Like what efforts? How do you split that?
You know, I have put some thought into this earlier on. It's like writing a report. Most of the sections, and it's a large report, when it's done, it will probably be 1,000 to 2,000 pages long. The report, the figures, and everything that goes into it. Many of the aspects of that report would have to be done for every agency for every GSA. So if that report, just bundling it up together, costs $150,000, that's $37,500 per GSA, and that's to some degree exclusive of acreage. Then there's the work on the model. They're pulling all the data together for that. Some of it is easier for the city of Madera, obviously, and that's why we should be getting some credits. We have a total of 2 projects. We have the Berry Basin for recharge, and we have the water meters, and that doesn't change from year to year to year. What does change, however, is the reaction of the water table to what's happening. We know that, or based upon the previous model, that we are balanced. When we go from year to year, we're about close to sustainable, so we're not having any real effect. The model, however, might show over time that that we're not quite what we thought we were. I can't tell you why, but things are going to change. They're going to gain more knowledge of how the sub-basin reacts to rainfall, to the number of new wells that are being drilled by farmers, and so on and so forth. So that model has to be run, but many of the inputs stay the same for the city. More inputs for the county and, say, Madera Irrigation District change. So they'll be, I'll go ahead and call it, they'll be messing around with the model a bit more to go ahead and understand that. But still running the model, the large part of running the model stays about the same. So that's, there's still 2 more pieces to that, but that's the sort of thing that.
Yeah, I get the writing of the report, because maybe the writing of the report may require 100 pages for each agency. I don't know. I mean, I'm just thinking that may be an equal part of it. But when it comes to these predictable models that we have, like you mentioned, we have only 2, with the exception of some fluctuation and rain and what have you. I mean, the county and MID have a lot more unpredictable.
Sure.
And I see that you may want to allocate a lot more to that area versus something that's very predictable that we have constantly every year. And that's where I think the actual model, I say, well, I mean, I maybe a hybrid of an actual, and to your point is not only the fact that we have less acreage, but we also have less assessment to do based on what we have as our predictable factors, right? Mm-hmm. Meters and our, what did you say, recharge basins? Our meters and our
basin.
The recharge basin and the meters are our 2 projects.
That's the only projects we have.
Yeah, I'll try to give you another example. When I go into the report, and again, it's very large, I'll do a search for the city. And it comes out with not a lot of specifics, but equally I might do that for Madera Water District or the Madera Irrigation District. I can't say that I've done that, but I might come out the same. What I'm getting at is a large part of the report may just be generic, It's not for city, it's not for county, it's just, it's built up to support the whole effort. I'm not trying to argue for the larger amount. I'm just trying to go ahead and say that it may be equal across the board for a large amount of that effort. The consultant will, I do trust the consultant to ultimately come up with what he believes to be a fair allocation to the GSAs, but I don't necessarily think he's going to drop it down by $50,000. We'd be talking 10 or 20 maybe, and then hopeful for more.
And at this point, like you mentioned, there's no grants available like there were before, and that's why the county was probably forking out the majority of that.
Yeah, the county is less likely to, yeah, they simply don't want to float the whole thing this time around. Or, like my speculation on my part.
And based on your report, MID is pretty, they're set on their stance too, right? Although they also share about 40% of the acreage.
Yeah, I'd say so. I don't think that MID was expecting it to come up to $95,000, but they're not balking at it. Again, it's better than what they would have got on acreage.
Councilmember Montes?
I have a question on tasks 4, 5, and 6 on the actual model. So it was 40% was distributed to the county, and that's based on size of the county for evaluate and update GSP implementation progress, and that's for their portion of it, right? So like the things that
I don't have it in front of me, but yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. Well,
I apologize. I really should have.
No. I mean, you put it in here for so. Let's see, MID, City, and Madera Water District are all contribute 20% of those final 3 tasks, and in the county it's 40%. So do you know why that would be different? I would think MID and county would be not the same, but similar. Maybe MID would be a little bit smaller, but you know, to attribute that, I mean, there's got to be a reason why they attributed 40 to the county and 20 to everybody else.
There must be, but the consultant didn't really go there. In fact, the consultant made a point in the email that we received on this to say it was difficult to go ahead and come up with anything in terms of actual effort, what it might be. So I think they probably just did 20, 20, 20, and 40.
So these options are
feels good, but
yeah, right. But the options were all developed by the consultant.
Yes. And we didn't have that for the first meeting. It didn't, you know, it's my querying the county that caused them to go ahead and ask the consultant again for a number.
I mean, it's not a difficult decision here, but obviously you want to go to what's more beneficial to the city or your entity, right? I think everybody's making that same calculation.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, I guess if I don't think anybody's gonna step up, but can we do that? I mean, I would say, okay, in the interest of cooperation, to do the actual with a not to exceed. Or is this negotiable? Can we say, okay, well, we'll do 70 instead?
You can do anything you would like as a council, of course, but if you're asking, can we say we'll pay the 95,000 as a not to exceed number? It can't go higher than that. I don't know. Is that what you were suggesting?
Yeah, or can we even say, well, because with acreage, we'd be at 16,000. Right.
Yeah, $16,200.
All right. I mean, obviously, some of the bigger agencies are going to say, "Well, it's not beneficial to us." Can we say, "Okay, well, we'll just do 70"? I mean, it sounds like a negotiation, at least a little bit, right?
It sounds like a negotiation, but if I'm thinking about what the county is saying, they want a methodology that can be followed. So if we say we'll do 70, how do we how does that relate to the other GSAs? We want 70, somebody else has to go more. Is it the county? If it's
All right. Okay.
I was just going to say, if you can change the percentages in that methodology. And I mean, they're coming up with their own percentage. You just said it right now that he just threw those numbers out there. We don't know how he came up with that, but that's how he came up. 20, 20, and 40. Well, it equals 100. Well, let's go down to where we're at 10%. Maybe the Madera Water District at 10%. And then them two can battle out the other 80%, make it a 50-30 for them. And that, that's an alternative that we can use as well. But I would say not to exceed 50,000. If we're going to negotiate, then that would.
I'm sorry, say what?
Not to exceed 50,000.
Okay, so whatever percentage that relates to.
Well, we'll divide 50,000 into 495, and we'll get a percentage, and that should be our percentage. Right?
Sure.
I mean, that's.
So 50,000 sounds like somewhere around 11%.
Hey, we're going up from where are we at 3%. I mean, we're giving in a little. I mean, we don't. I think that's fair to start off there. I mean, I don't want this to go back and forth, but I think they should recognize that the majority of the acreage and on these GSAs lies on these two other bigger entities.
Yeah,
I would agree with that.
Okay. Let me get my booklet so I can go ahead and take note on this. Okay, so I heard $50,000. That relates to a percentage. Would you like to make it 50, or would you like to make it I don't know, a less random percentage as an example?
Can we say 12?
50,000 is an even number.
12%?
Okay.
I mean, again, it's 11.3%, but I mean, I think we work together. We're partners in this. We're not trying to take away from the fact that there's a lot of work to be done, but I mean, they have to consider that you are looking at an agency, or I'm sorry, a city that only takes up about 12,000. Now that you added the other 2,000 acres, right? I mean, it was at 10,000, and now with the Village D added another 2,000. I mean, that's 12,000 acres. I mean, how much more can we?
Yeah. This stuff is fairly complicated and confusing to go ahead and get to something. Sounds like 12%. The logic is council picked $50,000, which comes up to 11.3%. That's a kind of randomish number. So we round up to 12%.
And I'm curious as to how this consultant came up with the 40, kind of to the question that Councilmember Montes had. And I mean, they didn't really have an answer, but other than this is what they had. So if he's going to throw that out there, then why can't we? I mean, let's meet in the middle, right?
I get the feeling that the consultant was feeling like he was between a rock and a hard place, and he had to come up with something. But and he did.
It's okay. I mean, is there any reason that we have to say, okay, we got to prove this like right now? Do we have a little bit of time, correct?
I really don't know. The county's fronting the dollars. The consultant will probably be spending on the order of $50,000 a month. That'll go for a little while. Then it'll ramp up as you go into in towards January, and at some point in time, the county will either be antsy about receipt of the funds or not. It could be that this goes on for a little bit. I feel like the 12% is probably it's probably a good number, but I understand our side. I understand their side. I'm sure all of you do.
And with that understanding, do you feel that $95,000 is a good middle place?
It depends. It depends on your point of view. The $95,000 feels reasonable when you think about the past. And if we had gone this alone, we would have spent. Going back to the very beginning, we might have spent $1 million+ if, and there's a big qualifier there, if we had done it the right way. I can tell you that some GSAs, they threw a few words on the pieces of paper and called it good. And that's why we ended up having mediation talks for a little while about a coordination agreement between the various GSAs in the subbasin. As you recall, there are 7 GSAs in the subbasin. We have 4 as part of one GSP, and 3 others have their own GSP. And we weren't getting along for a while, but ultimately we did. So if we had gone alone, we might have picked the high road and did it exactly the way it should be. Or we might have done the low road, but we would have been at loggerheads with other GSAs. I feel we would have been into a fairly expensive GSP if we were going to do it the right way. So the $95,000 may not be a bad place. I mean, we're in reality $95,000 to get us from go 5 years ago to now isn't really all that bad. The trouble is it's hitting all at once.
So I'm not feeling the confidence in your words and/or our city manager. So I think, as a body, you are the eyes and the ears of what we want to see. And I think it's important for you to communicate that to us, right? I understand you have a staff report here with numbers, but I'm not the technical expert on that. So if you're saying that $95,000 is fair, then say it's fair. Okay. For me, it makes it a lot easier. But if we're going back and forth that this is acreage and this is that, then, I'll say, well, wait a minute. I mean, we get, and in many cases, it's the city that gets the short end of the stick. And it's because we're not doing our due diligence. If you want me to do my due diligence, I need to make sure that your report is telling me exactly what you feel is the right number.
Okay. My opinion is $95,000 is fair. I say that we hold our ground solidly when it comes to the water well mitigation program. We should not be a part of that program. If we're going to be part of it, council's already agreed to, it has made a recommendation of 3% of that. That's 3% of an unknown number. I've heard that it can cost as much as $1 million a year for a little while to go ahead and mitigate the farmers outside the city. The mitigation to the farmers is not the responsibility of the city. We will, in fact, probably be, unless the model changes, we will be at a point in which we have no impact on the model in the next 2 or 3 years. The reason we would have about a 3% impact right now is because the calculation for that 3% goes back to the year 2015, before we had a lot of our water meters installed, before we had the Berry Basin in place. When we go into the next GSP, most of our mitigation measures will be in place, and the model should start to show that our impacts go to 0. Most of the other GSAs, including MID and the county, agree that, I think it's MID mostly that agrees that we really don't have an impact on the groundwater aquifer. I think that's where we should be standing our ground solidly.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor Garcia. So, Keith, you're basically saying in good faith, because the county has been fitting the bill for several years. And if we would have done it ourselves, it would have been hundreds and thousands of dollars. And we really have to pick our battles, you're saying, and this is not a battle to pick right now, because they have fronted this money throughout the years to come up with this plan.
Yes.
Even though we feel by acreage it's not fair. And maybe we say yes this time, and next time we say we want to go acreage. We understand you fit the bill, but now we have to make the right decisions. Because I do understand you're speaking for us, and it's hard to go up to bat with other staff members that know that they've been paying hundreds of thousands of dollars. And they do know that if we were on our own, we'd be paying a lot more too. So at that point, I'm looking at the best interest of us working together with those agencies, MID, who does a lot with us with our basins, the county, who we need to really work together with to make some movement. And if we are saying yes, then we're going to get the other water district to maybe hopefully jump in, and that we will all be aligned and be able to move forward. So with that, I'm in favor of the 95.
Okay.
Councilmember Rodriguez.
Thank you, Councilwoman Gallegos. I just want to reiterate what you said earlier, though. We would stay up to 95, but if any of the other agencies decide to bring in less, and at that point, we come back to the table again, correct?
We say we're back into the discussion.
Because we don't know if the Madera Water District can come back and say, well, no, I like the acreage. So at that point, then obviously we bring it back.
Yes, so your recommendation, I'm going to put words in council's mouth for just a second. Your recommendation would be that there would be a maximum contribution of $95,000 and all other agencies have to agree to a formulaic amount that follows this. Should any other agencies seek to reduce their amount, then the city will be back. We'll revisit the number as well.
I think at that point, the county should step up and just take that rest, because our MID should split it. They have the most acreage, and city would be, that's it.
Yeah. Yes, potentially. Moving forward, the process is going to be rather difficult. The county still does not have most of its projects in place, so I can't predict how the process is going to go in terms of balancing the aquifer by 2040. But that's not really part of this discussion. I just fear that the future says we're going to have some problems. What I would like to see is for the city to get past its projects, be done and out of it, and essentially make the same statement that MID did, in that we've done all our projects. We shouldn't have to carry the load from here.
Amen.
Councilmember Rodriguez.
And that's going to be one of my recommendations, is that our city staff is assertive when they bring us these recommendations and not having to come back and make those changes. Your assertion is at the beginning, exactly like MID. We've done all these projects. This is where we stand. This is why we believe we should do the acreage. But now we're having to come back, and it seems like we're having to bend a little. And that gives us a weaker position as a city. So I'll ask that the city staff do a better job in asserting themselves when it comes to these particular projects and or progress. Thank you.
Sure.
I think you have your direction.
I think we do. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith.
Good night.
Next, we move on to item E2, Mayor's appointment to the San Joaquin River Conservancy Board. Alicia, do you have this item?
I do, Mayor. Thank you. One moment till I pull up my presentation. Good evening, Mayor and Council. This evening, I bring before you the mayor's appointment to the San Joaquin River Conservancy. Every 2 years, the mayor is responsible for appointing members of the City Council to serve on various local and regional committees and organization boards, as well as liaisons for city initiatives to serve a 2-year term. The most recent committee assignments were determined on February 1st, 2023, and these terms are set to expire in December of 2024. On May 1st, 2024, Councilmember Anita Evans submitted her resignation to serve on the San Joaquin River Conservancy, creating a vacancy on this board. Tonight's recommendation, due to the recent resignation of Councilmember Evans from the San Joaquin River Conservancy Board, Mayor Garcia, with the City Council's approval, shall appoint a new member of the council to serve as the primary representative. This is based on Government Code Section 40605, states as follows: in general law cities where the office of the mayor is an elective office, pursuant to Article 5, commencing with Section 34,900 of Chapter 7 of Part 1 of Division 2 of Title 4, the mayor, with the approval of the City Council, shall make all appointments to boards, commissions, and committees unless otherwise specifically provided by statute. The next slide shows just a snapshot of some of the boards, commissions, outside boards that are currently filled, showing the San Joaquin River Conservancy at the very bottom. Primary council member appointment is currently vacant, and Mayor Pro Tem Mejia serves as the alternate for that board. I will now turn it back over to the council for direction.
Since we have a vacancy and Mayor Pro Tem, well, no, that's no longer Mayor Pro Tem Mejia, correct? City Council?
Yes, I'm sorry. This was a snapshot from when we brought it to council early in February of 2023.
I want to ask you if you want to take the primary role of the Conservancy?
I respectfully decline, Mayor. With my full-time job with council, chairing Housing Authority, and my volunteer position on La Guelaguetza, all of my time is really booked up.
Okay, doke. Is there any other one that would like to volunteer?
What are the dates and time for that committee?
Councilmember Evans, I don't have that offhand. Councilmember Evans, do you have that information?
Same day as council. We meet, and it starts at 9 o'clock in the morning. And it generally runs till about 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
9 to 4 on council days?
We can.
Yeah. Seeing no volunteers, then I will take the position.
Thank you, council member. So I'm sorry, Mayor, this is to adopt a minute order. So we can have a motion on that item, please.
Second, if that was a motion on his end, if somebody wants to make a motion to appoint the mayor and the San Joaquin River Conservancy, then I'll go ahead and second.
That's fine. Motion to approve item E2 by myself and second by Councilmember Rodriguez. All those in favor, say aye.
So just to make sure, I'm sorry, the motion was I had second that. So let me do the motion here instead, because the motion is to appoint Mayor Garcia to the San Joaquin River Conservancy.
I'll second it.
Do we need to do public comment on this one too?
Yes.
Yeah, we do, huh? Are there any members? I'm going to hold on a second on the motion because I think we skipped a step. Are there any members of the public wishing to comment on this item? And I'm assuming that we don't have anybody on Zoom or emails.
I have no written public comment, Mayor Arnoldo. Do we have anyone on Zoom by chance? And no one on Zoom.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll close public comment and bring it back to Mr. Rodriguez. You made the motion. Who seconded it?
Woman Evans.
Woman Evans. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? The ayes have it. That was
Mr. Mayor, I do have a question regarding that. You brought up the alternate. So Councilwoman Mejia did mention that. Are you still would consider as the alternate?
There wasn't a change to that, right?
No.
So we're still good on that?
Yeah, we're still good with that, I think.
Alrighty, we will move on to item E3, PG&E policy and customer resource update. Mr. Alonso. Just back from a blustery day in San Luis Obispo.
Well, good evening, Mayor, council members, and Team Madera. I honored to be able to spend the evening with you guys and come and give a quick update on income graduated fixed charge, which was just passed by the California Public Utilities Commission, and then talk a little bit about some affordability efforts and a quick breakdown of what your dollar is being spent on at PG&E when it comes to your rates. So income graduated fixed charge was passed by the CPUC this past month. This is the beginning of an effort between the investor-owned utilities, the California Public Utilities Commission, and various advocate groups to help address the issue of affordability and bringing down residential customer bills. This is a topic and a pain point that has been such for a little over a decade, and everybody got together and put some action in place. In 2022, the legislature passed AB 205, which mandated that by this year, the California Public Utilities Commission put together an income graduated fixed charge with at least 3 different income tiers that would help bifurcate residents' bills and change them from where they're currently at now. Currently, your price per kilowatt hour or your price per what you're using, it's bundled. It's the cost of maintaining, building, and innovating the system plus your volumetric charge, which is what you're using. What the fixed charge proposal does now is it bifurcates that. It separates them from the fixed cost of what it takes to build, maintain, and innovate the system, and then what your actual use is. So care customers will pay $6 a month. FERA customers will pay $12 a month, and then your traditional customers will pay $24.15. And then on the volumetric end, with income graduated fixed charge, you'll see a reduction in your price per kilowatt hour from between 5 and 7 cents. So if you're a care customer and you're paying 29 cents per kilowatt hour, a reduction of 7 means that you're saving a quarter of your overall price per kilowatt hour, which bringing down your fixed cost and then your price per kilowatt hour will translate into a meaningful cost savings per month. So that is the breakdown that I just went over. Care customers will be at $6 a month, with FERA at $12, and your traditional customers at $24.15. The $24.15 number was adopted by the commission because that's what SMUD does. And they felt that based off of what the hard infrastructure looks like and then the makeup of customers, they're the most alike. 2415 is also kind of a middle point between what investor-owned utilities and then publicly owned utilities pay statewide. Some publicly owned utilities pay a fixed cost of as low as $6 a month to a range as high as 87 that the Riverside Public Utilities District has. So this is a midpoint, and the commission felt that SMUD and PG&E customers shared a lot of similarities in expectation of service and then the type of grid that we have. So now going to a quick affordability update and just wanting to break down what we're using the dollar for at PG&E, and wanting to highlight a couple of issues that I think are important as a local government body for you to hear, and then gives you some context as to some of the communications that you may be seeing out of us over the course of the next year or two. So out of every dollar, 31 to 32%, or almost a third of it, is just state mandates that get passed through your bill. So the legislature comes up with an idea that affects investor-owned utilities. It gets passed, it gets put on your bill. So that is an area where we're we can identify that we need relief, and that we'll be working with the legislature and the commission on finding ways to be able to roll things off the bill to realize real, substantial, and actual savings that can help provide some rate relief to customers. Our cost of generation and O&M, our operations and maintenance, is about 54 cents, so about half of your dollar, and that's the real cost of building, maintaining, and innovating the grid. About 9 point something cents is our authorized rate of return, or what PG&E can make off of our service, and then 5% is taxes, federal, state, and then a good bit here locally to the county, and then here to the city as well. Some specific breakdowns that I wanted to bring up is customers in their bill are paying $1.8 billion system-wide, or about 10% of what you pay every month. For the sake of conversation, we'll say if a customer has a $200 bill, about $20 of that is vegetation management on the wildfire prevention end. 6% of the monthly bill is helping to chip in towards CARE, FERA, and some of the other income qualified programs on the affordability and the energy resiliency and weatherization end. And then probably the biggest chunk outside of what you're using or your volumetric that you're paying for, if you don't have residential solar, you are paying about $35 a month to subsidize residential rooftop solar. So those are some of the significant bits that folks are paying towards. And in wrapping up, we take the feedback and the responsibility of serving customers in an affordable manner very seriously. Over the course of the last 2 years, we have started to unveil some cost savings measures. In 2023, we were able to realize about $510 million in cost savings, with $300 million of those being in reducing the costs around vegetation management, $70 million in reducing costs around undergrounding, $24 million in reducing costs around interconnection and when you go and you energize a business or a significant project. And our ultimate